This is an interview with David and Diana Lett. They own Eyrie Vineyards. And today is the 3rd of January 2003, and my name is Barbara Doyle. And so I'm going to ask these folks to give us a lot of information about their winery and the history associated with it. So starting with this list of questions that I have here, what got you into the wine business?
How long a story do we have here? Let's see.
I have 80 minutes of tape.
Okay.
But there's more than one question here.
Well, primarily, as I mentioned, I grew up in Utah, which is not exactly the locus of wine knowledge in the United States. Can you hear?
Yeah, I think it's coming out all right.
And I went to the University of Utah and took a degree in philosophy, and well, I actually started in pre-medicine and majored in philosophy because I figured I was getting too much technology and too much science thrown at me with pre-med, and it needed tempering and interpretation. And so medical schools at that point were saying that they wanted liberally educated people. So when I applied to medical school back in 1961, I guess, after I graduated, I had a degree in philosophy and pre-medicine. They didn't want philosopher kings. So the medical schools I applied to, which were the best in the country, said no. So I have this useless academic combination. And I decided, I had a dentist in Salt Lake who was really good. And he talked me into applying to dental school, which I did. But I applied to dental schools in Maryland, Seattle, and San Francisco, ones that were near the water so I could go sailing. Mm-hmm. That was how serious I was about dentistry. So I guess I was having an interview in San Francisco at College of Physicians and Surgeons, which was a dental school there. Just on a whim, I drove up to the Napa Valley, and I guess it was January of 61, 62. Yeah. Was it 61 or 62? Let's see. Graduated in August 61. Would have been January of 62. And at that point, there were about 3 wineries in the Napa Valley that could be called, what would be called now, super ultra premium or whatever hyperbole they use. And that was Mayacamas and Stony Hill and the old Souverain Cellars, which is now Burgess Cellars. And I went to Mayacamas, and it was January and it was raining, and I went up this muddy dirt road on the top of the Mayacamas Range. And here's this winemaker out there with barrels out in the rain, stirring something, cleaning the barrels, doing something in it. You know, it was probably soaked, cold, and miserable. And I thought, my God, that looks romantic. So I met that fellow, Bob Sessions, and then went over to Souverain, where I met Lee Stewart, who was one of the pioneers in the Napa Valley of truly good fine wine. And he had an Englishman named Gary Grosvenor working there. And Gary was working his way around the world from winery to winery. And he told me about UC Davis and the program there. So, on my way back to Salt Lake, Donner Pass was closed. That was when it was a 2-lane highway. Closed because of snow, and I stopped at Davis and said, hey, I've got this degree in philosophy and pre-dent, and I want to go into winemaking. And they said, yeah, sure. So I got this philosopher king thing again. So it took me a little while to convince them. And I enrolled in a master's program there, and soon decided that I was going to be filtering white wine through little nylon beads for 2 years and doing some professor's thesis for him. So I changed and took a second bachelor's, where I could...
In what?
In viticulture.
Well, was your master's supposed to be in viticulture?
Well, it was going to be viticulture or enology, and I decided at that point, I came to Davis to learn about grapes. I knew nothing about grapes. I figured winemaking is something I certainly need to know about. I need the rudiments of it. So I majored in viticulture. That's the most important thing. where the wine comes from, the source, and minored in enology. So I took all the enology courses, but I majored in viticulture. And I graduated from Davis having all the prerequisites from pre-med and so on. I got through Davis in 2 years and went to Europe for about 9 months after that. Oh yes, there is a backup on this. When I was at Davis, having grown up in Salt Lake, I didn't exactly know what Pinot Noir was. I didn't know what Bordeaux was. I didn't know where it was. But we had tastings, we had courses as part of the enology program, and I got exposed to Pinot Noir from Burgundy. At that point, there was nothing grown in California that resembled Pinot Noir. They called it Pinot Noir, but the federal law at that point was you only had to have 51% of the variety in the bottle to call it a varietal name. And Pinot Noir being light in color, a lot of people just blended in Carignan and Alicante and some of the old Italian varieties and called it Pinot Noir. There was no Pinot Noir business in California. So I tasted Burgundy and I got the real thing, and that was a divine revelation.
It's what Jason, our son, calls it the cosmic brick. Fell on his head.
Yeah. So I started researching climates where Pinot Noir might work besides the Côte d'Or and Burgundy.
So can I just interrupt? When you finished at Davis,
I wasn't finished then.
but you were planning to go into the wine growing business?
Oh yeah,
Okay,
that's why I went there.
all right.
Over
Well, you planned to go into medicine too.
well, it was over my parents' protest. I got an offer from Lee Stewart. I should back up here. Can I do that?
Sure.
Okay. When I got back to Salt Lake, Lee Stewart offered me the job that Gary Grosvenor had had. And I was just hot to pack up my bags, get out of Salt Lake, and start at Souverain Cellars. And my parents, I was their only child, so they had all of their chips on me. So we had this discussion about dental school. My father said, why don't you go to dental school and, make a lot of money and then you can go do this hobby later on. Turns out he's probably right, but we don't admit that about our fathers when we're in our early 20s, right?
Or 30s.
Yeah, that's true. So I compromised and said, okay, how about if I go to Davis and take an academic degree in winemaking and grape growing? And we compromised. That was okay. So that's the backup. If you look at Pinot Noir, though, going back to Pinot Noir, it's grown in the Côte d'Or, which is about, 30 miles long and maybe 3 miles wide. That has been traditionally on this planet the only place where Pinot Noir could produce its pinnacles. And I started looking at, while I was at Davis, other regions around the world that might be cool enough for Pinot Noir because it demands a very cool climate. It's a fragile varietal characteristic in all Pinot varieties. And if it's not grown in a cool climate, the varietal characteristic, the character of the grape, boils out during the ripening process. Literally boils out. And you lose the flavors. So this cool climate of Burgundy is where Pinot Noir retained these flavors. So I started looking at the South Island of New Zealand on paper, northern Portugal, where we have some grapes planted now at a friend's place, near Ponta de Lima in northern Portugal, and the Willamette Valley. And the Willamette Valley kept coming up as the place. But I went to Europe for 9 months after that just to sort of confirm this idea about why grapes are grown where in Europe. And if you go to someone in Burgundy and say,
I'm going to stop it.
okay,
Oh, yes, here we are. We're in business.
where was I?
You were
You were-
talking about the rationale for Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
And
you looked
and
at
other
various
varieties.
and other
the whole-
varieties.
The whole idea.
The pomology department at Davis is in the same building as the viticulture building. And there was one book, and I can't remember the name of it for the life of me. It was talking about growing fruit in cool climates. That's where you retain flavors in fruit, all sorts of fruit. Okay, that's beside the point right now. I'm in Europe, and I was there for 9 months, and I went everywhere from, from Austria to Portugal. But primarily concentrating on France, and I'd ask people, why is this particular variety grown here? Why do you grow Pinot Noir in Burgundy? You just barely make it to maturity every year. Some years are wipeouts. It's a difficult grape to grow here. Why do you do it? And the answer was because this is, well, number one, the answer was c'est tradition. But if you look at it, it's where the grapes kept the flavor. And if you go to Bordeaux, I mean, you could plant Pinot Noir in Bordeaux and ripen it every year. You could plant the Bordelais varieties in Rhone, in the Rhone Valley, and ripen them every year. No problem. Just getting grapes ripe is not the point. Retaining the flavor in the grapes is the point. So after having my theory sort of confirmed by the fact that certain selected varieties are planted in Burgundy, certain ones in Alsace, certain in Champagne, Bordeaux, and in the Rhone Valley, where they just fit the growing season. The varieties in the Rhone Valley, you could never begin to ripen here or in Burgundy. But they ripen at the end of the growing season in the Rhone Valley. They're very late maturing varieties, and they fit the climate and they retain the flavor. That's the whole symphony. That's how it plays out. So, with that knowledge in hand, and having done the previous research, I came back to California and got cuttings of Pinot Noir and related varieties, which all fit a amphilographic formula.
What kind of formula?
Well, a grape amphilography describes a grapevine, or the characteristics of the leaf and the growth characteristic and the ripening period. The most important thing to me was the ripening period. Yeah. And these were all what is called period 1 varieties, or the earliest ripening varieties. And that would include Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc, Aligoté that grows in Burgundy, Pinot Meunier, which grows in Champagne, Gewürztraminer, which grows in Alsace, and Riesling is a period 2 variety. It ripens 10 days later, theoretically, than the Pinot varieties. But I thought it would work here. So with that knowledge, I went to California and I gathered up cuttings.
Where did you get the cuttings?
Depended. The Pinot Noir I got from Wente Brothers Greenfield planting down in the Salinas Valley. It was one of the first plantings down there. And it was all virus-free material from UC
So that's
Davis.
Outside of the Napa Valley area?
No, that's south. That's
so
just inland from Monterey.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So this isn't the wine-growing area of the Napa Valley?
No.
Okay.
No.
Good.
I took Chardonnay cuttings from a friend's vineyard in the Napa Valley where Lee Stewart had made some of the most spectacular Chardonnay in California. So I took cuttings from selected vines in what's known now as the Draper Selection. It was a selection I made with the vineyard foreman at the Draper Ranch in the Napa Valley. Riesling, I think I got also from the Draper Ranch. Pinot Gris wasn't grown anywhere in the United States, nor was Muscat Autunel, which is an Alsatian variety. And Pinot Meunier was not grown anywhere in the U.S. Pinot Blanc was misnamed by Davis. What I brought up here as Pinot Blanc is now called Melon. I don't even think it's Melon. I think it's a clone of Chardonnay. There are a number of reasons for that, and I can go into them, but I won't. Any rate, suffice it to say, I went to my major professor at Davis and said, I will prune the Pinot Gris and the Pinot Meunier and the Muscat in the variety collection. They had 4 vines of every variety from around the world. So I pruned these vines and I took the cuttings and brought them up here. And it was about 160 cuttings per variety.
So the cutting is what you get when you prune the vines after the harvest?
Yeah, you prune it into a stick maybe a foot long. You put it in the ground to root. And that becomes your...
Oh, you didn't need a rootstock?
We planted, there was no phylloxera in Oregon then.
Right.
And it was my feeling that if people are not either dumb or greedy, that we don't have to have phylloxera here. Well, you know what's happened. We're still on our own roots, and I'm still planting vines on our own roots, but that's a whole other story. That's the way we grow grapes here. I think that the vine should dictate its own destiny. A rootstock is a man-imposed thing, and it changes the characteristic of what happens up above, the scion that you graft onto the rootstock. That's a whole other story. How many hours do you have? How many hours do I have?
Well, 80 minutes on this, but I can always come back with another disc.
So I gathered up all these cuttings, and in January of '65, actually late December, I started off from California. We had the worst flooding. Were you here then?
No.
We had the worst flooding in the Willamette Valley. I got to Eugene.
You had never been to Oregon
I had
either.
never
You
been to
never
Oregon
set
in my
eyes on
life.
Oregon.
This was all on paper.
All right.
I had studied the climate and looked at the soils of Oregon. Climate was the most important thing for me. And I got to the Willamette Valley, and the I-5 had just been completed up from Eugene. And it was a lake. I mean, there was this ribbon of freeway and a lake on either side. The place was totally flooded. You can go along the Wilsonville Road now, and I think there's still some marks on some of the old trees where the water level was, and it's as high as this.
Yeah, I think I've
ceiling.
seen a couple of those.
It was a great,
Wondered about
great
that.
They
beginning.
weren't kidding about rainy up here, were they?
It was an amazing beginning, so. Golly, what was the next part of the sequence?
Well, you had all these cuttings, and then you came up here, but you didn't bring the cuttings with you, did you?
No, they came
Okay.
up. They came up separately. I shipped them up, but they right after that. So in March, I looked around. I found a place to live over in Silverton across the valley because I loved the village. It reminded me of an Alsatian village. And there's a church up at the top of the hill with a steeple, and then you go down, and it was just a charming place. And I saw all these other places around where, you know, there were overturned cars with blackberries growing out of them and goats chewing clothes off the line and stuff. And Silverton was sort of nice. So I looked around the area around Silverton initially. That's where I was going to plant. And I couldn't even find a piece of ground to rent to put the cuttings in. So I found a place outside of Corvallis through a friend of mine. And we put in, I planted the 3,000 sticks there, and then took a job in a berry nursery in Salem. This was in March of '65 now. And I went into this berry nursery, Weeks Berry Nursery in Salem, and I walked in 25 years old, knowing everything. I had 2 college degrees. And I said to the guy, you know, I know plants and yada yada. I have a degree in plant science and blah blah. He said, you're way overqualified for anything I have for you. And I said, yeah, but I'm hungry. So he put me to work for 75 cents an hour bundling blueberry cuttings in the shed. I was later promoted to tractor driver because I've been driving tractor in Salt Lake since I was 12 on my family's farm. So I got $1.25 for that. And I just saw Wayne Weeks last week, actually, in McMinnville, and I reminded him of the 75 cents an hour, and he said, yeah, and I think you were overpaid.
I think you should say that little plot that you had down in Corvallis was rented.
Yeah.
And it was just all the grape cuttings were planted real tight together in little nursery rows. It was just to start getting them rooted and protected.
Okay.
Good point. So then I started the search, or let me move on. I started looking around for land in the Silverton Hills, as I mentioned, and everything was in huge acreages then, and I simply couldn't afford it. I mean, I didn't come from one of these wealthy backgrounds that.
Yeah, that's one of my
uses-
questions in here.
No, wine was not a plaything. I came up here with a specific purpose and idealism to make wine, and I was quoted in the Wall Street Journal a number of years ago as saying, I came here to make wine, not money. And it's worked.
Pinot Noir.
All right, we're going to stop again.
That's pretty non-climatic.
Okay, we're back in business.
Where am I? Silverton, living there. Okay, so I couldn't find the land over in Silverton. And then this job was obviously not going to support this venture. And a friend of mine was in college textbook publishing. He told me about a job that was available as a textbook representative for Scott Forsman Company. It was coming up in June of that year. So I applied for the job, and strangely enough, they hired me. And this was a job that gave me an academic year to work. I mean, I had 3 months off during the summer. I had Christmas vacation, and I had spring vacation, just like, because I couldn't call on any colleges, they were all closed down. So that gave me time to work the vineyard. The pay was not good, and I
Better than
traveled.
$1.25.
It was better than $1.25,
You got a call.
but slightly. I got a car and I traveled 4 states. I did Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Alaska. And then they threw in Northern California after that. Kept trying for Hawaii, but somehow the sales manager kept that. Any rate, while I was going to and from colleges, I carried an auger in the back of my car here in the Willamette Valley. And I started, finding a likely looking hillside, and I'd go up and ask permission if someone was there, and if someone wasn't there, I'd just go do it and dig and take a little soil sample to see how deep the soil was. And I spent almost 2 years looking for the right piece of land. I avoided the Dundee Hills like plague because the houses were already happening in Dundee. Get some water, please. So I stayed away from the Dundee Hills. I figured this was going to be overrun with subdivisions, and the grapeland, the prime grapeland, would be gone. In those days, it was prior to Senate Bill 100 and land use planning in Oregon. And the scenario was that all of the agriculture land was in the valley floor, where the soils are rich and good, and that's true. And hillsides were destined to be view lots. But this piece of land where we're sitting, not quite, but just over about a quarter of a mile from here, came up for sale. It was 20 acres. It was perfect. The right elevation, the right slope, the potential for water, for the winery I was going to build there. And this was in 1966
Oh.
at this point. And the land came up for sale, and I bought it. This was in
What did you pay approximately per acre?
$485 an acre.
Okay. What was on the land that you were buying?
It was a blown down prune orchard from the Columbus Day storm.
Okay.
And
So the owner was anxious to kind of get out.
yeah, it was sort of lying fallow, and it had been for 4 years since the storm. And I pulled out each tree with my little Ford 8N tractor to save $200 that I would have spent on a Caterpillar to come in and root the whole thing out in about 3 hours. So I spent $200 replacing the clutch on my 8N tractor.
Don't forget the poison oak.
And the poison oak that I got internally from wrapping chains around the trees. But the nice thing was that fall I got sent back to a sales meeting.
It's that summer.
Was it summer?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was. That's right. It took
Right.
that summer, prior to buying the land. I was sent back to the home office in Chicago for the quote new man's meeting of Scott Forsman employees, and one of the new men was Diana, who was working in the Dallas, Texas office as a college service representative. She was the backup to the guys who were out in the field. And so we met, and she proposed to me 3 days later. No,
You can contradict
I
it.
proposed,
Talk about it.
I proposed to her. I proposed to her 3 days later.
What did you propose, David?
Well, that's another story. And we were married 6 weeks later. Over the protests of her mother, who said she would spend more time picking out a dress pattern than a husband. And we flew up to, I guess we were married October 1st. And at that point I had bought the land, and we flew up here, and just to get the ball rolling, we started digging a few rootings out from the nursery down in Corvallis and and healing them in up here. And we
So
started,
by healing them in, you're still not putting them into the
not
vineyard
in
where
the
you
ground.
want?
We planted a few vines in 1966 just to get our land planted to some grapes. Most of the planting was done in 1967 and 68. And that took us up to about, from an original 4 acres, 68, we planted another 3. So we had 7 acres, and that was about all I could handle with the traveling, and we had 2 young children.
So this, you were working for Scott
worked for them
for several years?
For 8 years.
Okay. Okay, well, that kind of answers one of these questions in here.
Yeah, I'm not following the pattern.
No,
here.
but that's all right. I mean, I just said, buying land, having to wait, buying what you need to plant and the machinery you need in order to operate the place, and then so many years before you see $1 of income coming out of it, you need to have some economic support behind you. And
You're either a corporate giant and you come into
Right,
this for
yeah.
a hobby, or else
right,
you
right.
or else you go to a lot of farm auctions and buy used pole bean wire and used pole bean stakes. I have some end posts out here that are clear grain cedar that are still in the ground. They've been there since 1967 with no treatment.
I mean, all these people who have, deep roots in this area because their pioneer ancestors came here 1840s and 50s, they should love you because your story is the same.
I don't think they know the story. I think what was another interesting aspect of this was, since there was no wine business at all up here or grape growing, and not a whole lot going on down in the Napa Valley.
No, there was
Except
Richard
the scale
Summers
was
down
different,
in
and-
Hillcrest and Napa. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, there wasn't a lot of stuff you could draw from. Everything sort of had to be jury rigged or kind of searched out, or you had to get it from someplace else that was more exotic than just going over here to Oregon Vineyard Supply and picking up what you needed, and everything was more difficult and less available. So it made it a lot more interesting.
It was fun. It was
It's
fun to
my
go to farm
challenge.
auctions. I mean, Dick came up in 1968, and we went out. I remember a farm auction in Gaston where we were bidding on a stainless steel milking bucket, and I finally won the bid at $3.
You incremented the bidding by 5 cents?
Yeah,
That was
just
our
about.
pump, probably.
But I bought most of my equipment at farm auctions. I mean, there were a lot of pole bean farms that were going out.
I was just going to say, but that would imply that some of the agricultural activities that had been sustaining this area were dying out.
Well, they were going to bush beans instead of pole
Oh,
because
okay.
they were less labor intensive.
Okay.
So all this trellis wire, I bought trellis wire for 2 cents a pound in reels. It was great. And steaks were 25 cents. End posts were 25 cents. A steak was 2 cents. I still have some of the, we have some fencing made from some of those old cedar stakes. And I guess then what did we do? We moved from,
Well, we had 2 children in a rapid succession. kind of surprised.
we had one in Silverton. We had moved from our original apartment. And we lived in Silverton. I was commuting across the Wheatland Ferry over here in the summer times to work the vineyard. And if I forgot a crescent wrench and the tractor broke, I was going over to my neighbor all the time. Thank God for my neighbors, who I'm sure Ted Werfs and Roy Werfs were a couple of brothers who owned farms adjoining us here. And they thought, this guy is nuts. But he's a nice kid. We'll help him out.
They were so sweet. Pulled them out of the mud many a time.
Jeez. So then we moved to Carleton, now a locus of the wine industry again. But I'll tell you, Carleton back in 69?
We moved over there in 1969, early 1969.
I used to walk down the street with my beard, which I grew, by the way, because I got carded when I moved up here. I was 25 years old. I figured I needed to look older. But I'd walk down the street in Carleton, and there'd be a guy in the barber chair, and the barber would wheel him around so I could look at the hippie walking down the street. And Diana, bless her heart, when she's pregnant with Jason, gets one of these craves one Friday night. She wants to have baklava and 7-Up. Well, where do you get baklava in Carleton in
I didn't
1969?
expect it. I just wished I had it.
So I went up to Junie's Tavern, which was where the loggers all came down out of the hills to fight each other on Friday nights. And I walked in there with my beer. I didn't ask for baklava. I said, "Do you have a 7-Up?"
That was tasted so good.
But now that is, what are there, 5 wineries over there now? 4
There's quite a few of them.
Yeah.
They've opened up some kind of joint winery over there, press and storage and all
Yeah.
that.
I
yeah.
think something like 10 or 15, it just right in that little area. So
And
anyway.
McMinnville has, what, 10 now,
Mhm.
I think?
Well,
We
that that folder that comes out in the Oregonian for the holiday weekends when wineries are open, 65 in Yamhill County.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, I mean, it
It
seems
was a
like
lot
every-
lonelier here before.
Well, it was very lonely at the beginning, wasn't it?
And we could hold growers meetings in the bathroom.
But what was the reaction of the people when you came here?
Pretty much as I said. I mean, I was a young idealist, and I grew up on a farm, but it was, our family income didn't come from the farm. My father was in the insurance business. But, I had some agricultural background. I knew how to drive a tractor and disc and stuff like that. But, this was seat of my pants. I was 25 years old, and I had 2 college degrees, and I knew everything. I mean, this is
Okay, so
The
you
way it
were
was.
insufferable at that point. so-
probably, yeah. At
But
that point.
enthusiastic.
But my neighbors were great.
Okay, so, I mean, I just see it as a fairly close community that you came into, in the sense that,
Pretty much, but they thought, this kid's nuts, but let's help him out before he fails.
okay.
But that was
so-
just, our immediate neighbors. I mean, I
Yeah.
think,
No one else knew we were here. The hell, the
Yeah,
Chamber
they
of
paid
Commerce didn't
attention
know
to
we were
us,
in
yeah.
McMinnville with a winery for 20
I hope
years.
they never
Oh.
did.
And speaking of winery, one of the
Oh,
reasons...
I gotta change this.
Okay.
Okay?
So, wineries we were starting to talk about. We had, in 1969, knowing that we were going to have our first crop in 1970, we had a winery designed...
So you planted some of them in 68?
66, 67, 68.
Oh, okay, this was when they were down in Corvallis.
No, this was here in the Dundee Hills.
66, all right, okay.
65, early 65 in Corvallis. And then when
Okay.
we finished,
We
get
dug
the
them
land,
out.
then we moved them up here.
Okay, I have a little trouble remembering the sequence of these things, but okay.
It's all right. Ask those things because they're important. Because these sequences get screwed up. 65, I came up here in January of 65, and we
Okay.
planted the cuttings in March. Moved the cuttings up to a friend's barn in early autumn of 66. And in 66, 7, and 8, we planted vines here on this property.
Okay, so you moved into this house then?
No,
We're
this
still
house
living over
wasn't
in Carlton.
we were in Carlton. This house was and land was not part of the original
Okay.
purchase. And I said to Diana, if that house on the road, that dump on the road ever comes up for sale, even if we get ripped off, we're going to buy it, because we were going to put in a mobile home down at the winery site, or a
Whatever.
wood
I
house,
don't know
or
what we were gonna
some
do.
prefab,
Yeah.
something or other. But this house, I think Diana drove up the road the next day, and there was a for sale sign on it. And it took the name Chateau de Brie, which Diana gave to it a long time ago, and
Took it to new heights. But tell about the first crop coming in, and we want
Oh,
to
the
build a
winery.
winery
The
down at the
winery.
vineyard.
I had the power run in, we had a well, we had wonderful water for cleaning up the winery and so on. I had a gravity feed winery designed because I had seen a gravity feed winery in Europe when I was there. And I thought, this is the way to go. Of course, now it's the in thing
Yeah.
of the late 1990s. But gravity's been around a heck of a lot longer than some of the new kids, even longer than me.
Gravity's been around forever practically.
Yep,
Yeah.
keeps us grounded.
Oh, so we got an architect, and we
Yeah,
have
yeah.
beautiful plans drawn up.
It's a neat winery, I still have the plans.
And so
But
where would the
19
building have been, on these 20 acres that you
Yeah,
bought?
and the original 20 acres.
And
is
the
the
access
northeast
to
slope,
it would have been off of McDougal?
99.
99, okay.
Up what is now Sokoblasser Lane.
All right.
They weren't here then, that was all Worf's property over there, and that was orchards. But-
Orchards growing what?
Oh, cherries, peaches, walnuts. What else did they have?
That was pretty much it. It was
Pretty much it.
incredible peaches.
Yeah.
Okay.
But as 1970 churned along, and I was going to every lending institution possible, and finally got my millionaire uncle in Chicago to guarantee a loan for me, and I took it to the bank here in McMinnville, locally owned bank. And the guy said, Chicago, that's way too far away. We won't take a loan from anyone who's guaranteeing it that far away. And I went to the small business ministry. I went everywhere to try to get some money to build this winery. We needed $30,000
Mhm.
for the initial stage of it. And by August of 1970, it wasn't happening. And I had bought some 30 new French oak barrels and shoved them in an old abandoned turkey processing plant in McMinnville. Just put them in a room in there. There was no electricity working in the building. But I had a flashlight. I knew that the room was cool, and I just put the barrels in there. So in August, I went over to, it was Jim and John McDaniels.
Were they the folks who had the granary?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And they owned this old building. They had used it for egg candling, and it had gone through many incarnations since being a turkey plant. Swift and Company. You know, we used to grow a third of the turkeys in the country. You did the interviews on this.
Oh,
you know
yes, yes. An industry that went from almost nothing to very significant to bust.
Yeah.
Well, we had one of the
It was
that was
Swift and
built by
Company.
Swift and during World War II, wasn't it?
Part of it in World War
Maybe
II,
early.
and then they added on in the 50s. But in August, I went in there and with a flashlight and started looking around in this room where the barrels were with 5 inches of cork insulation, a drained floor. And I thought, hey, and there was air conditioning. I thought, this will work. So we scrapped the plans of trying to build a winery.
Okay. So, why did you establish the winery in McMinnville?
Necessity,
An answer.
the mother of invention.
We had no money and they weren't going to give us any and they thought we were hippies.
I went over to Jim and I said, would you rent me that room? And he said, well, yeah, $25 a month. I said, it's okay. So
So you had just one room there?
we had one room in this 8,000 square foot building. It was 25 by 40.
Now, I'm just curious, this is the building that you're in now,
Same building.
with added space though?
I bought an old basket press from Richard Summers down at Hillcrest. It was about to break his back, so he passed it on to
A
me.
basket press is
It's an old,
it's one of these things that you
wooden-
turn like this
well,
and
this had a hydraulic ram on
it
it, but
goes down? Okay.
it's essentially a design that goes back to the Romans. I paid him $100 for that. We had the 30 new French oak barrels. They were $50 a piece, landed on our dock from France. I put a pump together from 3 broken pumps over at Allen Fruit Company in Newburgh. Kenny Allen was a great help.
Yeah, I
And-
keep hearing that name coming up too. So it's-
Kenny? Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well, that's
Alan.
where
He
I
got
learned.
behind the wine folks real early.
He did,
liked that.
and he used to loan me my fermenters, which were cherry brining bins. And those things are used all over this industry now.
All right, let me ask, is he still alive?
No,
Right.
unfortunately. He was a great guy. Let's see, I guess I bought some hoses new, transfer hoses. Ed Gormley, the night before we started harvesting, was crawling around the attic of this building, connecting up pipes so we could get water down into the room that I was renting. And we had a winery put together. We had a crusher stemmer. It was hand crank. I had an old furnace motor. I motorized it. And we put that winery together for about $2,500 in equipment. And it functioned.
Very creative.
Now, I mean, this was then a place to press your grapes, fermenting them, bottling them,
Storing and bottling.
and storing it in barrel. Well, the bottling.
We didn't
the
have
storage in
to think about the
Bottling,
bottling yet.
that's
That
right,
was
yeah.
a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
We bought the building in 1973, and it was a derelict. I mean, I won't even go into the gory details of it, but it was a dump, and it was scheduled to, just fall into oblivion.
So how many acres of grapes did you have by the time you were going over there?
We had the original 7 acres,
Okay.
because I was still working for Scott Forsman. In '73, I quit Scott Forsman, and because of corporate shakeups in Chicago, and I knew I wasn't going to last very long. But that's a whole other story too.
Well, we had reached
And
the
it was
point
time.
where
Yeah.
there was so much to do that we couldn't grow this if we stayed with that, and we couldn't stay with that because there was too much to do here, and we had our 2 little boys, and everything was.
Yeah, I wanted to see my
Pretty
kids once in a
chaotic.
while instead of being out in Pullman, Washington, peddling
Yeah.
textbooks and things.
Yeah, and one of our children
just
have significant special needs, so you know we had to give a lot of attention to the family also. So
It's tough times.
we had a full plate. So it was
You know,
time
that
to
little-
quit that.
That little thing in the Boys Up North about Jerry, didn't mention him, but the guy who ran the gas station in Dundee, that I was purported to have said, if you send anyone to the house to talk to us, I'm going to stop buying gas here. You know,
I don't
that
remember.
sort of
that.
fits. That sort of makes me the
Real
curmudgeon.
curmudgeon.
Well, yes.
Well, there's a reason. We had an autistic son. We had another son right behind him. I was selling textbooks, and we had romantics coming out of the woodwork, knocking on the door saying, "Can I pick your brain for an hour or so?"
Yeah,
We didn't have
there were only
hours.
2 or 3 people here growing grapes then by the mid-70s, so everybody wanted to come.
Well,
You
sure.
know, you couldn't
You
spread
were
it
the
around.
wise old sage, even
Yeah.
if you weren't old.
About grapes for hours.
So time was a little bit precious. But when I quit in 73, we had our first crop. We had the 1970 vintage in bottle by then. And I went out, Diana went out, and we tried to sell this wine. This was I came here to make the great American Pinot Noir. The wine was so disappointing because I made all these mistakes the first year. I followed my Davis education instead of my intuition. I fermented it too cool, I picked too early, the wine was nothing. So we didn't even call it Pinot Noir. Diana came up with the name Oregon Spring Wine. And we said a light, dry wine for all informal occasions. It was $2.65 a bottle, and it took us 3 years to sell 200 cases of it.
Wasn't the quick reception we thought we were going to have.
I had a mailing list from Bert Harris's store up in Portland. Bert sort of trained Portland in wine drinking. So Bert gave us his mailing list, 400 people, and we mailed out to them, and we did a nice brochure. As a matter of fact, a guy in advertising said it was the best winery brochure he'd ever seen. We mailed this to 400 people, figuring, we're here.
200 cases, 400
Yeah.
people.
You know how many
this is
responses
easy.
we got?
2?
That's a little high.
Okay.
We got 1.
One.
After a careful count, we determined, and a recount. And there were no dangling whatever they are, so no chads there. It was
Boy.
1 customer, and that was it. And I knew it was going to be uphill
Now,
marketing.
at this point, are you still working with Scott Forsman?
No.
No. So there's no income coming in,
You
and
got
there's
it.
basically 0 sales.
Yeah. It was a little sticky.
I guess we had some little bit of savings. I don't know. I can't even remember. I
We
think I
didn't
just
have any
blocked.
savings. My mother died in 65 and she left me $10,000 and I bought the land with it. You know, most people would have been smart and gone to a bank and got it financed. I just took all of the money we had in the world and threw it into that land. It's fine. We own it. And the rest is a blur until 1980 to me.
Yeah, just the
1979.
70s are lost. I don't even remember that. But a lot of people were
people came
beginning
in.
to come up here and
But now you've
No,
acquired more
right.
land from
No.
those original 20 acres?
Not at that point. We were still wanting to. We started planting up. When did we plant this block? We bought this house in 1970.
and we planted this home 5 acres in 1973.
73.
And yeah.
So your
So
plantings
it's
now
about
came from cuttings
5.
from your own vines?
Right,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
get propagated.
No
Oh,
other
wait,
source.
in the meantime, one of our big money making things was to make a
In the nursery
greenhouse,
business.
have a little nursery and all that, and that was a way to get more exercise. But I don't know that we made any money off of it.
No, we got frozen out one year. I had a whole bunch of plants ready to go. Jim McDaniel had paid for them. He was planting a vineyard, and they froze in the barn.
So there were other people coming here and planting. So we were trying to make some money from
So
selling
some people would take
grapevines and so
cuttings
forth.
from your
Mm-hmm.
I sold cuttings and I sold rootings
Okay.
that we had rooted. And
And
I don't know,
can
it
you
was-
can you give me the names of some of the people who might have been coming here and doing that?
well, sure, there was, Erath came up in '68, and then there was what?
Did he come to you for any cuttings?
I think they got some cuttings from us.
So I can't remember.
Yeah. Most everyone has. I mean, Pinot Gris, we made the first, planting of Pinot Gris in the United States commercially. So it wasn't a very popular variety, so most of the Pinot Gris that's around here now came originally from this site. All of the Melon or Pinot Blanc came from this site. The Wadensville clone that I brought up here came from, a lot of the wood that's around Oregon, a lot of the plants around Oregon are originally from this site.
Okay.
And certainly most of the Pinot Gris.
So who were some of the early winery or grape?
Adelstein,
Adels-
Ponzi, Sokolblosser.
Okay, and were they all bought something from you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Very much.
All right.
Either bought or gave it to him. Amity.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of, the source of a lot of the material was here. Erath got in the nursery business with Chuck Corey later on, and they disseminated a lot of material also. But the thing that turned things around, we were just scratching to get by.
All of us.
All of us, yeah, really. There
Nobody came up here with big bucks in the early in
Yeah.
that 70s. That was, yeah.
But in 1979, a friend of mine in Burgundy said, this French magazine, Gaumillot, is going to do a tasting of American Pinot Noirs vis-a-vis French Pinot Noirs from Burgundy. And she said, send some over and I'll put them in. And so Becky put them in, and we came out third with one group of judges and not so well with another group, but we were the first American Pinot Noir to show anything in France. It was sort of like back in 1976, Stephen Spurrier did a tasting of Gurgitch Hills and Stag's Leap, Gurgitch Chardonnay and Stag's Leap. This put California on the map.
I'm going to tell you right now, when you get this index, there's going to be a lot of misspellings of these
That's
foreign
okay,
names.
we'll
Alright.
do that.
Oh,
But this was a big tasting in Paris, and all of a sudden California wine had credibility.
Yeah.
So here then 3 years later, they did another tasting in France, and this time it was
Lo and
Pinot
behold,
Noir.
Pinot Noir had credibility. Instead of this small little acreage of the Côte d'Or in Burgundy, there was, lo and behold, another place in the world that grew Pinot Noir. Robert Drouin, who has Domaine Drouin, Oregon now, was rightfully enraged at the tasting because the supplier of the Burgundy wines was not a very good negociant. The wines were peripherally good. Robert said, if my wines had represented France, the honor of France of Burgundy would have been upheld. So he called a rematch using the same judges, same wines, the next year in Beaune
Against his wine.
against his wines, and he hand-selected some pretty darn good vintages. And there was no question. We came in second by 0.2 of a point out of 100 points against his 59 Chambeau Musigny. And that hit the Herald Tribune, the
So
International.
we're talking 79, and he's got 20-year-old
This was
wine that he's put
1980.
in.
Right.
And you've got fairly recent vintage.
And we've got
okay.
5-year-old wine.
This was our 1975 vintage, and it's the same wine that had been in Paris the year before. And this wine, which by the way is still very much alive and lovely.
And expensive, I'm sure.
And expensive. It placed second out of all these wonderful Burgundies, and we clobbered the rest of the competition. I mean, California was nothing. And all of a sudden, Oregon had credence. And
Yeah,
you know
the
the
New York
strange
Times.
thing, and this is an aside, Mike Gurgitch and Warren Winarski, who had done Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay and shown that California could do these things in Paris, these guys and I had all worked for the same guy, Lee Stewart.
Oh.
I'm
There's
gonna
a
do that.
connection.
There is a
You
connection.
guys should do that while
I'm
you're
gonna
all
do
still
that. I know.
making
That's
wine.
part of my visit to California this year. At any rate, it hit the press around the world. about this win in Beaune, because Gomeo
Now we're
republished it.
talking what I would say Bonn, Germany, or
No, Beaune, France.
The
B-O-U-N-E.
heart of Burgundy, the heart of Pinot Noir.
okay, all right.
That's the heart of the Côte d'Or. And I was getting calls from Hong Kong to Jamaica wanting the 75 wine. And I sold a few bottles of it, and I figured this is just press hype, so I'm not going to charge an immense fee for it. So I charged $20 a bottle, which was, high enough, but not too high then. And people bought it, a few bought it, and then I pulled it off the market because it was so good and I made so little of it. That's another story.
Well, we weren't sure what we should do about it.
Well,
I should have capitalized on it more than I did, but actually the press took care of it. From then on, Oregon was moving.
But as you were making your wine, and I mean we've got the 75 vintage that's really good, and then you only get that accolades in 79. So what are you doing with the wine that you're making? Is it selling locally, or are you having wine with lunch and dinner in the evening?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we first came up here, we were drinking CK Mondavi out of gallon jugs, so it was a.
We
it was a
defined the
definite
word
movement.
schlep. We're schlepping it everywhere.
We took it. Diana would go and deliver in Portland, and schlepping or slipping on lettuce through the kitchens, delivering a case of wine here and a case of wine there. That's
So,
how we
and
got.
wait,
Wait, were you selling it? I can't remember. Were you selling up in Washington and?
I don't think-
We're
I
just
don't
a
know
little-
Washington touched
where
it.
was the here and there that you were selling it?
Yeah.
That's me. Jerry, oh gosh, restaurants that aren't even there anymore.
Okay, so
But locally.
you would go to these
Yeah,
places
in
and just
Portland, I was doing that. Yeah.
and introduce yourself, and would you like to try that?
I remember one chef of a very nice restaurant. Remember Belinda's?
Oh yeah.
And that guy refused to talk to any woman about wine.
Deb Hatcher got the same treatment.
She got yelled at, but this was just recently for
Recently.
her. Yeah, but
Not
he
the
was
same
not
guy.
going to discuss wine with any woman.
We
You
sold
should
in
have just let him know
Oregon.
that you wouldn't talk to him.
I said you're just missing the chance to taste a wonderful wine.
Sold in Oregon, and then Jerry Draper took our wine out in California.
Down in San Francisco.
The guy who owned
that's
Draper
right.
Vineyards, where I got my original Chardonnay, his son was in the wine business, and he took our wines out in California, and I thought, boy, we got it made now. Pardon me. And the California response was ho-hum, and it still is pretty much.
But we got calls from lots of different places after the bone tasting.
After the bone tasting, we started in New York too. We had
Well, we
calls
were
from probably
scared.
20 distributors, and I check them out. Don't go with them; they'll never pay their bills. And finally, I got this one guy, Ian Rabowski at Paramount Brands, and we're still with Paramount Brands, who sounded pretty decent. And a friend of his had called him and said, "I tasted this wine of this idiot out in Oregon, and I think I want to handle it in my store. Would you clear it through your distribution?" So Ian did it, and it started us in New York.
Going into the 1980s and that early part, you should turn around and do some Pinot Gris right in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was going to.
Okay.
Ready?
We're on, yeah.
Okay, let's see. So the 80s took care of Pinot Noir, and people started flocking up here.
This is people to set up
plant
their
grapes,
wineries?
you bet.
Yeah, okay. Not just to buy,
No.
to do, well, maybe both, okay. Go ahead.
And Pinot Gris, which we had grown Pinot Gris through the 70s, so it was some of our original planting here. And it was never a wine that I was particularly turned on about because I was so focused on Pinot Noir. But I kept liking it, and it turned out that Pinot Gris was so good with salmon. And we had so much salmon in the Northwest. We used to trade our Pinot Gris production to salmon fishermen because we only made 25, 50 cases a year of it. And it was going over so well that I decided to butt over the Riesling, which I detested because it ripened too late for this climate. I was carrying boxes out on my head with 4 inches of mud on my boots by the time we picked them. So I butted over all of the Riesling in our original planting.
Butted over, you mean took them out?
No, I sliced off the top of the Riesling and put in a bud,
Grafted.
grafted,
Oh, okay.
essentially grafted. So that gave us instantly about what is it, 6 more acres of Pinot Gris. And then in 1979, we went in partnership with a good friend of mine, John Shetke, good friend of ours, on a vineyard at the top of the hill here, which we now call Stonehenge. And that's all Pinot Gris, another 12 acres of Pinot Gris and an acre of Pinot Meunier. So we were beginning to get in the Pinot Gris production business, and in 1984 we went from 600 cases, we were at that point making 600 cases of Pinot Gris, and barely selling it, because no one knew what Pinot Gris was. Hell, most people didn't know what Pinot Noir was. And in 1984 we got this bumper crop, and it was the first year the budded over vines came in big and Stonehenge came in big, and I had 3,000 cases, 5 times the production. And I thought, my God, this is going to take me 10 years to sell. And I went out into the market, and at that point, Ponzi and Adelsheim were growing Pinot Gris also. And we used to go, the 3 of us, go out on the road and do what we call the 2 Daves and a Dick show. And talk about, well, first of all, we had to explain where Oregon was, second down on the left, and then go into why we're in Oregon growing grapes, and then go into this grape no one had ever heard of, Pinot Gris. And at least in our case, I gave Pinot Gris away almost to get it on in restaurants, in good restaurants, where they taste it, where they pour it by the glass, because I never found anyone who didn't love the wine. And it just took off. We had that 3,000 cases sold in a year and a half.
Isn't Pinot Gris basically the same as Pinot Grigio?
It's the same grape.
Yeah. So, I mean, if a place was serving Pinot Grigio, then they wouldn't go to...
Pinot Grigio
They
being
didn't
served
serve that
around
much
here.
either.
Okay, well, I'm from
Pinot
the East
Gris.
Coast, sorry.
Pinot Gris, Pinot Grigio, Blauburgunder or Ruländer in Germany, Tokay Alsace or Pinot Gris in Alsace, Circa Barat in Hungary. It's all over Northern Europe. But it was never planted commercially in the United States until right here.
Okay.
And we made the first production of it right here. And Pinot Grigio at that point, no one had ever heard of it.
I don't think they were drinking that much back east.
And the Alsatian wines,
Maybe
the
some.
Alsatian Pinot Gris were not, no. Alsatian Pinot Gris weren't going anywhere. And all of a sudden the Alsatians decided that Pinot Gris was really good with salmon. Wonder where they got that idea. And they started running with that. And Pinot Gris took off to the point now where it's the second largest selling white wine in the United States. Pinot Grigio, Pinot Gris. Gallo has planted, I think they're up to probably 20,000 cases. Saint Michel is planting Pinot Gris out with a goal of 50,000 cases out east of the mountains.
King Estate is huge.
King Estate is big. They're at 60,000 cases of Pinot Gris, I think. But they're in the right climate. And bless Ed King, his advertising says you can have Pinot Gris from other places, but it's not going to be Pinot Gris unless it comes from the Willamette Valley. And good for him.
Yeah, that's good.
Because east of the mountains in that high desert plateau, Washington and Oregon have always sort of sorted it out. They grew varieties that were adapted over there, sort of like this old thing that I was talking about, Burgundy versus Bordeaux and so on. They grew later ripening varieties out there. But they're on this Pinot Gris bandwagon, and Gallo is on it. California is on it. We're talking about thousands of acres in the Central Valley of Chardonnay being torn out and planted to Pinot Gris. This is something I started in this country. Do I get a royalty? No.
Oh,
Well, do you get recognition?
No. Well,
you get some
sometimes,
recognition.
yes. But it's an amazingly successful grape. But to follow up on Ed King's advertising, it's true. This grape, Pinot varieties are adapted to the Willamette Valley of Oregon. Maybe other places in the world. I remember when people used to tell me, grapes in Oregon? So, there may be other places, but they're so limited because, again, this fragile varietal characteristic that Pinot Noir has, same thing in Pinot Gris. If it's in too warm a climate, poof, it's gone. And you get white wine. With Pinot Noir, too warm a climate, poof, you got red wine. But you don't have Pinot Noir or Pinot Gris.
Okay.
That's my life story.
Well, that only takes us to the middle of the 80s.
We're not even at International Pinot Noir celebration, or
You don't participate in it?
oh yeah,
Oh,
but
okay.
no. I was just that was we're not even up to where that got started.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Oh, I see
all
what you
that,
mean.
yeah.
You know, there's one thing that really ought to be injected in here, and that is, I hear often that this is a young region. Oregon is a young region. We're as old as California's premium wine business. As I said before, there were 3 premium wineries in the Napa Valley in 1962. Americans did not start drinking more dry table wine than dessert wine until 1968. And California's premium wine business happened a number of years after I had come up here, actually. That's when people started drinking more table wine. And when varietals took off, and the Spurrier tasting with Gergich and Winarski that I mentioned earlier, that sort of set California going. And the Drouhin tasting set Oregon going. But there was nothing going on prior to 1968. Wine knowledge in the United States was, well, you remember going into restaurants. I remember when I was traveling, you'd get a bottle of Guild Tabola if you were lucky with the checkerboard label.
Well, it was pretty limited. I mean, there was the jugs of Gallo and Italian Swiss Colony. And I tasted Zinfandel in 1968, I think at Italian Swiss Colony. And I couldn't get Zinfandel back in New York. They didn't, what were you talking about? They never heard of it before.
Right. There was nothing going on.
And I mean, it's still, you know, people will get these things how much in a box.
Well, the
Bag in
whole
a
food
box.
thing too. I'm just now reading this book called The Soul of a Chef, and it's kind of all about the new food movement now and everything. But they keep talking about James Beard and Julia Child being the parents of good cooking in America, and that all began to start in the mid '60s. And by the mid '70s, we had a revolution going in food and wine in this country. So,
MFK Fisher ought to be put in that.
and MFK Fisher.
I can remember the Chianti. I mean, in college it was, you know, it was cheap stuff, but then when you're in college, that's what you could afford.
Did
That's
you
right.
drink Mateus Rosé in the little ceramic?
Oh, maybe,
Of course he
maybe.
did. Because you wanted a little ceramic jug for a candle.
Right, you put your flowers in it or something.
So, in the 80s, I guess the ball got rolling here in the 80s. And people started coming up here. By 85, things were really happening here. And in 87, a realtor in McMinnville by the name of John Roothouse decided, you know him?
No, but I've heard the name mentioned.
Okay.
I interviewed Nick,
Okay.
and he mentioned that
Okay,
name.
well, Nick's probably giving you background on
No,
that.
no, no, you tell me.
He knows as much as I do. We were all in on it from the beginning. Nick's Italian Cafe is a story unto itself, too. I mean, that was the first decent restaurant north of San Francisco.
Yeah.
When we lived in Silverton, we used to ask people what there was to do in Portland. They'd say, "Have you seen the zoo?" And that was universal. That was all there was. There was one good restaurant in Portland, the Kitchen Kettle, Armenian food out on the east side. That was it that we liked.
Until
And then Nick's happened in
L'Auberge.
McMinnville.
Well, L'Auberge.
Yeah, until
Don't forget
L'Auberge.
L'Auberge in Portland. Yeah.
Yeah, Bill McLaughlin and Mike Vidor started these restaurants, L'Auberge, Genoa, and the Wood Stove.
Yeah. Early 70s.
And that was the first good cuisine in Portland. And they were some of our first customers. Bill McLaughlin and Vidor showed up here at our door one day. One of those people we wanted to see at our door.
Yeah.
That was in '70, wasn't it?
1970.
Right after we had produced the first
They had
one.
just heard that grapes were growing here, and maybe there was some wine, and they wanted to come have it for the restaurant.
Time to change again. Okay.
So between Vidor and those folks up in Portland, that started the restaurant scene in Portland, and Nick here in McMinnville.
He was 1978.
78,
Mhm.
yeah. And the back room at Nick's used to be where all of our kids played together. There was a basketball hoop there. There was no table. There were no tables back there. But God, what was the story? You tell it.
Well, I think that's where
I
all
call
of
it
us,
the
all
same.
kinds of people, artists and wine people and people interested in food, we were all kind of scattered around out in the woods in Yamhill County, you know. And then Nick's came, and we all found each other, and it was wonderful. We finally had a little community where a bunch of outsiders sort of fit, because we had all come from somewhere else. And we were all, we weren't suspect because we'd been to college, and we weren't suspect because we drank wine, and so we fit. And that was a wonderful sort of beginning, I think, of our feeling of community. And it was a great place to hang out, and the kids all grew up together, all that sort of thing. So
And the
that
symbiosis between
and the food
good
and the
food
wine.
and good wine.
And that
You've
really
seen-
started an energy,
It
didn't
did.
it?
I mean, we have restaurants in this county now that will rival anything in the world
Really good. Yeah.
because food follows wine. Wine is food, and where the two are grown together, where they exist together, you have this wonderful, wonderful thing. And Nick started this. I mean, he had the first good food north of San Francisco, truly, at least in this outback community here.
Yeah.
And he started selling Oregon wines. And more winemakers, everyone would go to Nick's, and the symbiosis just happened. And Nick's used to sell more of our Pinot Gris than the entire state of Illinois.
Well, I don't know, does that say anything?
Yeah, it does. We had a good distributor in Illinois.
Okay.
It did, yeah. That's good. So International Pinot Noir celebration started in 1987.
And that was John Roodhouse's brainchild because he wanted to promote the area. He was a realtor. He wanted to promote the area for grape growing. And we soon...
So there was an ulterior
Oh yeah,
motive.
it was definitely a real estate thing
But
at first.
That was the initial grain, and all of us idealists decided, no, we're not going to play this game. We can have a legitimate event here that is not going to be competitive, that is not going to be a commercial event. It's just going to be fun and celebrate Pinot Noir. So it became the International Pinot Noir Celebration. Got to remember, again, Pinot Noir doesn't grow many places on this planet, and we happen to have one of them. So this thing, the first year we were thinking, oh my God, are we going to be able to make it? And they get, 400 people?
Yeah, we needed 400 people.
Sold out.
But
Did
the idea
pass
was,
them.
yeah, excuse me.
Go ahead.
The idea was to bring people who produce Pinot Noir together. And so we had people from France, people from Oregon primarily, and then producers from other areas. So it really was international.
Yeah, Nick said you had people coming from Australia and Italy and Germany and
Just all over.
Chile, I'm not sure.
And chefs.
Yeah.
We had a chef one year from France. We put on these dinners for 400 people. We had chef from, just various. Let's see, I think they did one. Alsace. Just everybody's been represented. And so it's like 15 or 16 years now it's been going, maybe longer.
Yeah, it sounds like it's
Quite a deal.
It's a
And now it's all
successful
lottery in January. You can't get in if it's jammed with people who would like to come, and it's been called one of the best wine events in the world.
thing. Well, it's nice that it's here
Terrific.
instead of, in Europe.
And it had a dual thing of promoting, of getting the fellowship together, and it also had it promoted the Pinot Noir as a variety and brought a lot of recognition to that variety and a lot of interest. It inspired more interest in Pinot Noir.
Has it led to some of those people who came to the International Festival to then go to wherever they live or to move someplace else and start their own winery?
We saw a big increase in the
Yeah.
production of Pinot Noir in California, big increase in New Zealand and Australia. I mean, basically, it was kind of a kickoff for Pinot Noir.
Well, that was a good deal.
But people go, oh right, sure. You mean from McMinnville, Oregon? But it's true. I mean, it was a real, incubation festival for Pinot Noir. And it was exciting, and now this is a big deal grape
But
variety in the world.
it's not that unheard of. I mean, I remember reading that Gilroy, California decided to have a garlic
Garlic
festival once and they hoped
Absolutely.
300 people would come and 30,000 came. Gilroy?
But
So,
to
I mean,
say that
it's-
the Pinot Noir Celebration Festival inspired the growth of the Pinot Noir industry, it really did.
Yeah.
And it certainly brought people here to come and grow grapes.
All right, so you participated from the beginning?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. David and I were, David was on the board for the first 10, 12 years. 10 years anyway, yeah. And so that was the first big Pinot Noir event, and it's continuing.
And now we have the Oregon Pinot Camp, which you can also address. You're on the board.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that. So it was big excitement, and that's when the big money started coming in too.
Okay, starting in the mid to late 80s.
Late 80s, early 90s. Yeah.
You know, we've doubled the wineries here since 1990.
Oh, they've doubled since I've been here, which is
Yeah.
8 years.
Yeah, it's just tremendous, the
Yeah.
growth that's happened in the last little bit.
Let me ask a couple of questions that have not been answered in here. You told me what you paid for this land per acre when you bought the first 20 acres over here. Have you bought beyond that land? Do you own more than those 20 acres?
Yeah,
Okay. What does an acre cost now, approximately?
I don't know. It depends on the acreage, of course.
Yeah.
The problem with the Willamette Valley, there are people who say there are hundreds of thousands of acres here that you can plant grapes on. Well, yeah, there are hundreds of thousands of acres around the world you can plant grapes on. But the ideal sites in the Willamette Valley are few and far between. And we have 4, in all bias, ideal sites. So my feeling about our particular land and other pieces around here in the Willamette Valley, they should command premium prices. I mean, one of our vineyards is worth more money than this slope right across the street here. Mainly because it slopes the right way and the soil's better and there aren't rocks underneath it and yada yada.
All right. So I could talk to a realtor to get some
Realtor will
idea.
tell you, no, they're going to give you realtor talk.
You mean in terms of what it's
Yeah,
going-
yeah,
well, it
well,
really
I'd say-
yeah. Like what is
It
it?
should depend on, is it south facing, what altitude
Yeah,
is it?
Altitude is
okay.
specific and the soil type. I mean, we haven't started to differentiate a lot of these things. The realtors just sell anything to anyone and have from the beginning. Land in the Napa Valley, for example, goes for minimum of $100,000 an acre. Land up here is probably $25,000–$30,000 an acre
For
at
grape
this
land,
point.
for good grape
Okay,
land.
well,
For good grape land. For excellent
that's-
grape land, I'd push the limits up.
that's a reasonable response to that question. And so now, you've bought more land beyond that 20 acres are here. You
We have 100
jointly own a
acres total.
piece up here. Where else do you?
No, John Shetke and I, shouldn't say dissolved our partnership.
Well,
We
and,
just
and
stopped
it hit,
being
yeah,
partners.
yes,
He wanted to move. He had a house up there. He wanted to move, and he just sold out the rest of the operation to me. So we have 100 acres total in the Dundee Hills, 50 of which are producing grapes.
And what are the other acres doing?
They're sitting there because at my age, I do not want to plant another 50 acres of grapes because I would double my cost, double my labor, double my equipment, double my headaches. And as Diana said, add more zeros on this side and more zeros on this side. You don't get anywhere.
well,
I'm comfortable with what
Yeah.
our production is. I'd have to build a new winery. Forget it. We
So
just-
these other acres, that's 50 acres that are just sitting idle? They're not growing something else.
We have 12 acres of hazelnuts, and I should plant some other stuff, but the grapes tend to keep me rather busy.
Okay, so are you the person who does all the managing of the vineyards?
Yeah.
Do you work in the?
No, I do, office, and
Okay.
I have a vineyard foreman who has been with me for 18 years, with us for 18 years, who is fabulous, and we have a crew of 6 people, including him, that we sort of keep employed year-round. doing
Oh,
the vineyard.
that's quite a
And
lot.
in terms of, you ask if I manage the vineyard, I do the grand plan. You know, if we need to drop crop, they're not going to voluntarily knock off crop. They're going to be able
Drop crop meaning what?
to prune off green clusters so you can get the rest of them ripe.
Okay, so
Some years are like that up here. So
only some years are like it when you cut off some of the clusters so that you concentrate the sugar in?
Yeah, Like last year was a perfect example, 2002. People tend to go in fads unless they know what they're doing. So they follow these fads that you have to produce 1 ton to the acre to make the best Pinot Noir. Well, in a year like 2002, that's undercropping. That's not a balanced grape that comes off of there.
Oh, here we go again. On to the last track.
Okay, so our 4 vineyards are the original planting here. This is Eyrie, named for the fir tree that's at the top of the vineyards where there was a nest of red-tailed hawks. Diana came up with that name. And that's a 20-acre piece. The next piece we bought was Stonehenge.
And that's fully developed.
Fully planted. Stonehenge is fully planted. That's at the top of the hill.
And how many acres there?
Let's see, there's 15 acres total.
15?
15.
Okay.
And then in 87 and 88 we bought, 87 we bought a place over where the 2 highways divide. It's called Three Sisters Vineyard. It has nothing to do with the mountains. It's Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris, and Pinot Blanc. They're all sister varieties.
So where the highway divides, where 99 and 18 separate? And
No,
which?
99, where going back toward Dundee, where it becomes 4-lane.
Oh,
If
okay.
you look off to the left, you'll see grapes and hazelnuts up there. That's Three Sisters.
If you
Alright.
stay on Bremen Orchard Road and come Archery Summit, past Archery Summit Winery, and then down a little bit, it's right over in there.
Oh, they connect, okay.
Yeah, so
Just below
so we
Archery
can go around this road and not take the equipment out onto the highway, which is
Everything's
really
within a mile. And the other vineyard is Rolling Green, which we bought in 1988. And it's a little 5 acres planted. It's a total of 30 acres, just up the hill from here. These are varying elevations, and these elevations are very important because the upper vineyard will ripen 2 weeks later than the lower vineyard.
Well, that can be a plus, can't it?
It is a
Absolutely.
I mean,
plus.
that you don't
bet. You
have
don't
it
get all
all
the
coming
grapes
in
at
at one
once.
Oh,
right.
it's fantastic, and you can blend and jiggle around.
I can
with it.
individually vineyard name these things, what do they call it?
Single vineyard designation.
Single vineyard designation. I could easily do that, but we found that the whole is better than the parts. There are years when I could do it, but I think it's confusing to the consumer. I just
So
don't want to
what
mess
you
with it.
put out is Eyrie, and it might be some
put
from
out
here and
Reserve.
some from there and
Yes,
some from
it
there.
will be a blend.
The reserve Pinot Noirs all come from the original planting. 37-year-old own-rooted vines. And the estate wines from the other vineyards is Pinot Gris and Pinot Noir primarily. The Chardonnay and the Pinot Noir reserves and the Chardonnay estate all come from this original planting.
Okay, so how much land is not in grapes now? Are we actually talking 50
50.
acres? And you basically don't have plans for them? Is that what it comes down to? It's just a good investment, they're not making any more
And
land?
it'll be the next caretakers of the Eyrie Vineyards, whether, whoever that might be, who could plant more.
All right,
Well,
well,
we've reached our max.
and you've determined it's your max simply because of how much time you can put into it, is that it?
That and maintain the quality. I mean, I don't make wines to fit the market. I make wines that are rather idiosyncratic and they have to begin with from the beginning. And they require some selling. Although I'm seeing this thing turning around full cycle now, where people are beginning to rediscover Eyrie wines. We've had all this new frontier stuff, and now they're beginning to see some virtues in the style that originally attracted people to Oregon, which is our Pinot Noir and Pinot Gris.
I'm gonna stop it.
Okay. Where did I leave off last time?
Well, aren't we
Ask me
lucky
a question.
that I brought this? You were talking about your specific pieces of property, and prior to that, you were talking about, you're still talking about the property. And the last thing before that that was important was the International Pinot Noir Festival. 1987, so you've got quite a few years to go.
And what happened to the New Frontier? You dropped that?
I can cross it off of here, I can't cross it off of there.
Right.
But it's on here, it says that you wished you hadn't said it that way, or something like that.
Yeah, what's your clever way, Dan?
Well, I don't know, clever. It's just that that over the past 10, 15 years, a trend towards making very, very heavy red wines, the heavier the better, has sort of become an international style, thanks to certain wine writers. And that's not the style of Pinot Noir we like, and so we have sort of bucked the trend on that.
Okay, now can you describe what you mean by heavier or heavy wine?
Let David go into that.
Yeah.
Oak.
Heavy red wine, heavy is... Pinot Noir, first of all, is a delicate variety. It's a delicate variety on the grapevine, and it should be delicate in the bottle. It's a very difficult variety to capture varietal nuance in. And the whole reason for being a winemaker, besides preventing the wine from going to vinegar, is to capture the nuances of the varietal. And those nuances exist for a little tiny flavor window of a couple of days, a couple of hours or something, sometimes, depending on the heat. If you let Pinot Noir get overripe, you get more color out of it. It's missing 4 of the 9 pigments that are in all other red vinifera varieties.
Now, when you say deeper pigment, it's a darker red, is that it?
Let me go on.
Okay.
Pinot Noir is missing 4 of the 9 pigments that are in all other red vinifera, vinifera being European wine grapes, all other red varieties. So it's a lighter colored wine by nature, both literally and figuratively. If you let Pinot Noir get overripe, the little cells, the vacuoles they're called, that hold the coloring material, break down, and you get more color in the brief fermentation period that you have with Pinot Noir. So you get a more dark colored wine that's bigger in people's perception visually. And also you tend to get more sugar accumulation at that point in the grapes, which gives you more alcohol, which gives your tongue the illusion sometimes of almost sweetness, but certainly of a glycerin kind of a bigger quality, a bigger feel in the mouth. And then a lot of people, this is part of the international trend that Diana was talking about, put a layer of oak on top of that by putting the wine in new barrels or 1 or 2 year old barrels, where you extract vanillin out of the oak. And so you have all these layers of stuff that has nothing to do with Pinot Noir. And these are essentially big red wines, and that's what's happened recently in the trend in Pinot Noir. Warmer climate Pinot Noirs reflect that almost constantly.
What about the wines from around here?
It depends on the producer.
So some do and some don't, is that it?
Yeah. Depends on... I think I said this, so I might repeat myself, but if you ask a European wine grower about the secrets of making wine, he will point out to the window to his vineyard. That's the secret. The people in Oregon who know what their vineyards are like, or from whom they're buying grapes and they can manage those vineyards, and who aren't after these powerhouse Pinots, those people are making Pinot Noirs that have the finesse and the style and the grace that Pinot Noir ought to have, in my estimation. Otherwise, if you get Pinot Noir overripe, you can get good scores from certain members of the press, Diana alluded to, but you've lost the Pinot Noirness of it. So, it's the idea of being really commercial or sticking to the ideals. I've tended to stick with the ideals of making the best Pinot Noir I can in a very difficult climate.
Does being a smaller operation help you to stick
Yes.
to your ideals?
Certainly. Yeah, because we have all of our own vineyards, and we can control that most important factor. So I decide when to pick. It's not decided by some grower who's getting panicked by the rain clouds.
Oh, so anybody who gets grapes from fields other than their own could be running into this process of...
I've bought grapes in the past, and a grower has his whole fortune committed to just this crop of raw material, the grapes. And he's put a lot of money into that for the season. When the storm clouds start to gather in October, when we're going to harvest, growers start to panic. They could get, if the rain continues, they can get bunch rot and lose most of the crop. They can get downgraded on the price, so they panic. And oftentimes, people who buy grapes have to take grapes from the growers at what I would consider less than optimal conditions.
Okay, but these would be people that you've contracted with, or the
Yeah, and this-
winemaker has contracted to get these grapes.
And this isn't always true. I mean, a lot of the wineries these days, the more forward-thinking wineries, buy grapes by the acre instead of by the ton. So they're paying the grower regardless of what he brings in.
They have more quality control that
Yeah,
way.
there's a little bit more quality control. Ultimately, the quality control.
Wait, a little bit more quality control when you buy by,
By
the
the acre
By the
rather
acre.
than by the ton.
okay.
The ultimate solution is to own your own vineyards, because then you make the decisions yourself. When you own your own vineyards and you have the winery, you are making the wine in the vineyard literally. And I'm tapping the table.
But he's wanting to make that point.
Yes.
Otherwise, this is a bunch of exercise we don't need.
Making the wine in the vineyard, you'll hear from a number of people, and it's common knowledge in Europe. I mean, this is what I said a minute ago. European winemakers will look to the outside and point to the vineyards. That's where the wine's made. It's a concept that technological America has not quite come to grips with. They don't want to. It's too old-fashioned. I mean, grapes, what do they have to do with wine? My ego has to do something with wine. I get to manipulate in the winery and create it in my own image, yada, yada. I don't feel that way.
Okay.
I like to grow good grapes.
All right, would you like to continue talking about the time after the International Pinot Noir Festival started, or do you want me to ask some of these questions?
Ask questions. I think that'll probably fill in what
Okay.
happened after the Pinot Noir celebration.
All right, one of the things I didn't get an answer to is, what do you consider to be your yield? Because I've heard anything from 3 tons per acre down to 1 ton per acre. So what do you normally go for, or is there a normal?
There is no normal. This is Oregon. In California, or in warmer climates, you can prune a certain length on the grapevines and you're going to get X number of tons per acre. Here, we get rain during bloom often in June, May and June. And that can set the crop, that can destroy bloom. We can get anywhere from a ton to the acre to, in good bloom conditions, 3 tons to the acre, sometimes even pushing 4.
Now, does that, as you get more tons per acre, does that change the quality of the wine?
There is some conventional wisdom out there that says that's true. I've always found conventional wisdom to be a little bit too conventional. Last year, for example, 2002, was a year when a lot of people cut their crops back to get 1 ton to the acre, because that's what certain members of the press, who can't even grow a daffodil in a window box, have said is the way grapes, Pinot Noir, ought to be to produce the best wines. 1 ton to the acre.
That makes it pretty sweet though, doesn't it?
Well, in a year like 2002, it can. What happened was the grapes were undercropped last year. There weren't enough grapes on the vines for all of the warmth and the wonderful season that we had. We could have ripened, and we did ripen in some of our vineyards, perfect grapes at 3 tons to the acre. Our average over, I think the last time I took it was 5 years ago, so our average over, say, 27 years is 2.3 tons to the acre.
Okay. All right, so.
And that's what nature gives us.
This morning started off kind of a rabble perhaps.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so I wanted to add that yes, there have been definitely years when we have taken crop off because it looked like the season wasn't going to allow us to ripen. Many times we've taken crop off.
So this is,
So you have to just have some experience and some judgment and some good luck too.
Yeah, exactly. You have to know your vineyards for one thing, and you have to guess about the weather. Last year I did a dice roll. I could have been out at the casino betting on the weather. And I decided to take off grapes at one of our higher elevation vineyards that I knew there was less chance of getting them ripe. And I gambled on the lower elevation that we were going to have a nice October. And the prognosticators of the weather on the 10th of October were saying, we're shutting down. The monsoons are coming. And I said, I don't think so. Now, where do I come up with that? I'm not God. But it was a dice roll and it worked. So we got good quality and good quantity, which is a very rare situation in the Willamette Valley.
We like to call it paying for our hobby of growing Pinot Noir.
Yeah, it has to balance off the years when we get 1 ton to the acre. You get 3, then you get down to the average of 2 point
Yeah.
something. 1.7.
When do you do that cropping?
Generally in August after.
Oh, so there's a significant number of grapes that they're obvious grapes at this point, and they're...
There are a lot of people who, again, go by the scientific theory that it's a little better to take the grapes off before bloom, to take the clusters off. Well, that to me is totally cockamamie, because I've already said during bloom you can get wiped out anyway. You've got to see what's on the vines after set, after bloom, and then you can start taking clusters off.
All right. The next question is, why do you make these two less well-known wines, Muscat and Meunier, if I'm saying that?
You're saying it right.
Meunier.
Meunier, okay. I have never had French.
You're doing great.
When I moved up here, I had a theory of varieties that would grow in this climate, and those 2 varieties happen to be part of that theory.
In addition to Pinot Gris, which
Yeah.
is now well known, but that was
Yeah.
the first Pinot Gris.
Yeah. I brought 160 cuttings of each of those varieties. Muscat Autumnelle wasn't grown in the United States. Pinot Meunier was not grown in the United States. Pinot Gris was not grown in the United States. I had 160 sticks of each of those.
Things that were totally unknown really,
Yeah.
in terms of market
Right.
value.
But they're all period 1, i.e. early ripening varieties that fit our climate.
Okay, so how much of these 2 lesser-known ones do you
Very
produce?
little, very little.
I mean, are we talking an acre, less than an acre, a
We
ton,
have
or what are we?
1.3 acres of both of them, actually.
Each?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so what is
Muscat.
that more
It
or less
depends. We
typically
get-
produce?
Muscat is very sensitive to bloom conditions, and sometimes we get no crop at all on it.
Oh,
And Pinot
Which
Meunier.
is why we haven't expanded our
Yeah. Pinot Meunier is a very shy producer. At least the clones of Pinot Meunier.
shy, you said.
Yeah, shy.
Okay.
That's a grower's term for not producing too many grapes. So
Alright.
we generally don't make more than 150 cases of either one.
Do they sell at a higher price or lower price because they're so,
Well, they should sell at a higher price,
okay.
but they don't. Because there's a market out there that I'm sensitive to.
That's, what I mean, obviously, the market is going to help determine the price. Probably considerably
Well,
determine.
we've created markets for just about everything that we've grown. Pinot Noir was unheard of. Pinot Gris was unheard of. Chardonnay certainly was heard of in California. But we've created the markets. We created the prices. And a lot of people used to shoot for our prices because we were the highest. Now we're amongst the most reasonable.
Well, Jim Marsh made a comment that a winemaker, and he made the comment that they have a lot of ego, that a winemaker will make a bottle and just taking a number, will sell it for $40 a bottle, and then somebody thinks, has a bigger ego, so his bottle is going to sell for $45, and up it goes.
That's where we got into this quote that I asked you to eliminate. There are a lot of folks around these days who have, if they've made a business plan at all, it's based on the fact that they're going to be able to, right off the bat make Pinot Noir at $50 a bottle because they can make it bigger. And the bigger it is means the bigger the price. But it's not Pinot Noir.
Okay.
I'm
So
sorry.
Well, I'm going to
It's
ask the
big
question.
red
Makes
wine.
them sad.
I'm going to ask the question, and you can, if you choose, not answer it. Is Archery Summit one of those places who came in where they're going to sell, with one, it's going to be $100 a bottle?
I think that was in their marketing plan, and I think I've seen what Archery Summit's done to the marketplace, and that is there's a great deal of resistance out there now of people saying Oregon wines are too expensive.
Okay.
And it started not just with Archery Summit, but some of the garagistes around here, the people who make wine in garages, and they make 500 cases, who are going out and plugging these wines into a marketplace. And you know what? You can get a big red wine from Argentina for $3 a bottle.
Yeah.
And when you get a big red Pinot, a wine called Pinot Noir that's nothing more than a big red wine, why pay 50 for it?
Okay, well,
Why do it in Oregon?
Yeah, why do it
It's
in
too
Oregon?
hard up here.
At 8 tons to the acre in Argentina.
now you have, I'm using my word, been a bit of a renegade in not doing things the way first UC Davis said, and then the way many of the other growers and winemakers do it. So, has your process changed over time, or have you stayed steady with your course from the beginning?
Well, if you listen to my colleagues, I've dug myself a rut and I just have never gotten out of it. But I happen to feel that grape growing and winemaking are sort of 5,000 years old, and there are some traditions that need to be respected there. Because traditions are founded in reason and reasons. So I've experimented with some of these things. That's my nature. I mean, most of my college has been, besides my degree in philosophy, to temper my science. Most of my college hours were in science. So, you know, essentially I'm a scientist. I've tinkered, I've played, I've developed things here that a lot of people have copied and have become sort of the norm. But, you know, I've resisted things like fads. Irrigation is a fad here.
Ah, yes, that's a topic. Do you irrigate at all?
No,
Nothing.
nothing. We've irrigated in milk cartons when we have little tiny vines. We go around with the sprayer and put some water in the milk cartons that are surrounding the grapevines when they're 1 and 2 years old.
Like a little protective sleeve
Yeah.
to keep them from getting.
But this drip
Stall.
irrigation thing, this is nonsense. It's a fad, it's a craze, it increases the cost per
I was
acre
going to say, it's
phenomenally.
got to be expensive.
And
And it doesn't do anything. I asked one major vineyard here who had put in an extensive drip irrigation system on very close spacing, which makes it really expensive. Why? How do you justify this on the balance sheet? And the reply was, well, all the vines get to be the same height at the same time and they're all uniformly
Easy
perfect.
for picking.
Yeah, and I said, but that's not the way nature works. You ever been into a forest? Some things grow at a little faster rate than other things.
but within a year, they're all.
Yeah, within a year they've caught up. So, you know, you've spent all this money on irrigation to be trendy.
But even with irrigation, I mean, if it's drip irrigation, it's just on the ground, the vines don't get wet. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay, because you can't have the vines getting wet like that.
Well, you can in eastern Washington. They overhead irrigate there. But
But
it's
not
dry
here.
enough. It's dry enough over there that the vines dry out and you don't get the mildew problems.
Okay.
What bothers me about irrigation, and David too, and he's talked often, is also the use of water in that
Yeah, the
way. I
groundwater.
mean, that uses a tremendous amount of water that's not necessary to do. And so it's kind of well, that goes along with our irresponsible use of resources.
Yeah.
Another tub to thump.
So, I think maybe
That was me. It's time for a new tape.
to the next one. I think I know what your answer is going to be, but is making wine an art or a science? And yes, you can say it's both.
I think making wine is a natural process that would go on regardless of any human egos involved. And as I said earlier, the main thing a winemaker does, and my God, this goes against the Hollywood-style winemaker of these days, the main thing a winemaker does is be a doctor of preventative medicine. You just want to keep the wine sound. You want to keep it from spoiling from bacteria or biological factors or oxidation. And you want to keep it from going to vinegar, because if you crush up some grapes, it'll turn to wine first, but it's going to go in the metabolic process. It's going to go on and turn into acetic acid. So, winemaker's role is being a doctor of preventative medicine. I guess in that case, you're being a scientist.
Okay. Well, I
There-
get different answers from different people, so it's
The
interesting to
art
see.
of making wine is the art of being able to go out into a vineyard and know that vineyard and feel those vines and know that this is the time that they need to be thinned, that this has to happen, that they should only be pruned this large. You know, some people take the pruning weights off of the vineyard and they weigh how much pruning wood they have. And that's the formula for pruning the whole vineyard. When I prune a vineyard, I go out and look at a grapevine and say, what's this vine going to handle? Is it weaker than the guy next to it? Don't put as much fruit on it. You just have to be sensitive to those things. That's the art and craftsmanship, I think, of winemaking is out there in the vineyard again.
Now, do you do that for all your vines? You do it.
I used to do it. I don't do it anymore with 50 acres. My God, we wouldn't get pruned
Okay.
for 5 years.
So you basically train the people who work for you as to what your standards are, and you expect them to do it.
And they've been doing it so long now, they train me when I go out and try to say, well, don't you think you ought to do it this way, Javier? He said, but Dave, we've been doing it this way for a long time, and this is the way you told me to do it.
And they're good. They are
And they are
really
good.
good.
And they all live near here?
Yeah.
And they're all part of the same family, pretty much.
You want the winemakers, those guys are the winemakers. They're really amazing.
Overall, what's the atmosphere among the various winemakers? Is it support or competition or both, or has it changed over time? Is it a cycle or whatever?
I think Oregon has been a pretty mutually supportive kind of wine industry because we're not big business. It is family businesses, and we all, you know, in the beginning stages, we were also so small. It was nice to see another family on the horizon. And we used to have groups, even when we were just 3 or 4 of us here, we'd get together and talk about viticulture, how to be doing things better. And I think that spirit has pervaded this industry pretty much.
I think
Even with some of
it's
the
pretty
larger
much of a
growers.
keystone that
Yeah.
it's, you know, whether we do it every single instance, I don't know, but we try really to foster a community where people are cooperating and trying to be creative together because we're not big. And it's hang together or hang alone. So we've tried to do that.
Okay.
There are a couple of factors. The marketplace now is, we're in one of those down cycles, which I've gone through before, probably about 3 times in my career in the wine business. A down cycle in the marketplace. And there's more competitive. You can feel certain,
It's tense.
yeah, there's a competitiveness between the wineries, but still at the same time, I had lunch up at DDO, Domaine Drouin, Oregon, a couple of weeks ago, and Philippe and Veronique were there from France, and our relationship has always been this just sort of open sharing of anything that we know and we think and we feel, and it's a wonderful atmosphere. We compete with them, they compete with us. It's fine.
But, I mean, that's one area of competition, but another is imported wines, whether it comes from California or it comes from Australia. So, I mean, does this group, you have some kind of commission or some marketing board or something or other, don't you? I mean,
We need one.
what? What'd you say?
We do have one, yes. We need it to function more efficiently and effectively. And,
We have
and
a
we're
wine
getting there.
advisory board in this state, and early on we somehow adopted this tax of $25 a ton to impose upon ourselves so that we could finance both marketing and research. You've probably heard this from other people.
I've heard a little bit about it.
And you're probably hearing a lot of stuff these days because, at least from my point of view, I've been putting in since the beginning of the wine advisory board, and I've probably thrown over $100,000 into that thing in terms of taxes. And in terms of return on my investment, I've probably gotten a postage stamp's worth.
Ooh.
Except for the research at Oregon State, and they do a good job down there. The marketing has been up and down, and it needs to be fine-tuned for the marketplace of today.
Okay. And I've got some questions.
Was that politically correct
Well,
enough?
I was thinking maybe if
Come on, I have a friend who says, I'm determined to not be politically correct
Right.
about
So
certain
am I.
things.
I think in terms of maybe direct good to us specifically, it hasn't been so great, but I think there has been some good activity towards creating a recognition of Oregon as a wine region.
Washington has done a
Washington
much better
has
job.
been, yeah, and I think there's some organizational reasons why we haven't been as effective as we could have been, and I think those are being addressed now. I hope it will be a smoother process in the near future. So that's coming up.
I think the reason for the that Washington has had a better program than us. I said a few minutes ago something about the strength of this industry being it's the size, the relative size of most of the individuals who are in it. That's also been our weakness in terms of marketing, because I have a friend who made wine in Germany for his family for 275 years. He said trying to get 10 winemakers to agree is like trying to get 100 cats into a sack. And that has sort of permeated this individualist industry here, whereas in Washington you've had big corporations from almost day one, U.S. Tobacco owning Saint Michel and so on,
Oh,
Yeah.
who, they have managed to get the clout and direct the efforts because there are only a few people who are major players in there.
oh, I see. Okay.
That might be a gross overstatement, but I think it has something to do with it.
Well, I have to say I don't drink Saint Michel very often just because I tend to drink Oregon wine. But
Good.
knowing that it's owned by the tobacco company, I'm not going to drink it at all anymore. So there to them.
You mean you don't chew Copenhagen after you finish that bottle of Saint Michel?
Why do you limit the time that you're open at your winery to just those 2 weekends? That's all it's open, isn't it?
Yeah, you said the critical word, time.
Yeah.
I don't have time to be open to the public.
We pretty much, with a very small staff, do everything ourselves. And it probably would have been, I don't know. It's just the way we do it. We don't have time to do, and we have a lot of family obligations, and we just decided that we didn't want to have a tasting room. That
May change.
may need to change, We
Are
may
you
need
thinking of doing that?
I'm thinking of it because
because there are so many wineries now.
it's not just that, it's the crazy, cockamamie, stupid, asinine, I can't give you enough words to describe
Don't thump the
the
table.
legal atmosphere for selling wine in the United States, either through distribution channels which are, quote, legal, or by shipping to individuals in states where we can ship legally to only 12 states. It's preposterous. And with more competition and fewer distributors, at this point, wineries are looking to optimize their individual sales out of the winery. But even at this point, a person can come from Connecticut or call from Connecticut. No, let's say come visit the winery from Connecticut. We're open, our tasting room's open. They can't carry the wine back on the airplane because of security. They can't have it sent back to the state of Connecticut because it's illegal. It's preposterous.
But I don't know whether you're giving me just an example or a true fact, but I have a daughter who lives in Connecticut. And I can go in some of the supermarkets there and see Oregon wine. Not much, but some.
You won't see ours because our distribution in Connecticut has never sold more than I could sell on a street corner in McMinnville in a half an hour.
Every state has different rules, and every state has different fees to sell wine through a distributor there. So, and the fees are pretty stiff. So you have to have a big enough market to at least pay for the fees to send it in.
It's
So
$600 in Wisconsin. Now, how
some-
much wine do I sell in Wisconsin?
And some of the little wineries just don't go into a lot of states because of that reason. They have to really pinpoint their market states.
All right, we're
So,
going to stop.
it's articulate today, by the way.
I am.
Yeah, you're doing great.
I mean, is there a possibility that you could work together with other wineries to make this work better, this marketing out of state?
Let me tell you something, Barbara. Another pioneering thing from the guy you're looking at. A fellow named Brian St. Pierre and I, he was a wine writer in San Francisco years ago. We got together at the Camden Place Hotel in San Francisco in 1980. And we said, the future of the wine business is going to boom. And the only way small wineries are going to be able to survive is to be able to ship direct. With that said, we sort of spawned the idea of reciprocal shipment between states. So I went to Bill Nelson, who was our lobbyist for the Wine Advisory Board here. He drew up the legislation. We introduced into the Oregon legislature the first legislation in the United States to make it legal to ship to California, because it would be legal for California to ship here. The industry, the distribution industry in Oregon hit the roof and stopped it. Retailers stopped it.
Why?
Because the distributors have a monopoly, and they figured that this was going to undermine their monopoly. I mean, how many people are we talking about? Give me a break. I can go into this for hours, so I won't, but needless to say, what happened after that was California passed the legislation. Then we came back to the Oregon legislature the next year, which was 1984, as I recall. Maybe it was 86. And reintroduced the bill, and it passed. So we had the first two states reciprocal, and then Washington joined in. So between the three states, we started this whole movement in the United States. It was 23 years ago. We now have 12 states. You know, I'm going to have to live to be 400 years old before I see 50 states where we can ship wine legally. Now, I can ship an AK-47 to your daughter in Connecticut legally.
Loaded.
Yeah.
Loaded, not loaded, but with the ammunition.
Ammunition.
But I can't ship her a bottle of wine. Now you tell me something's
Yeah, that's
right.
seems
That's right
pretty
with
weird.
And with, we thought with the advent of the internet, what a great way to sell wine from small family wineries.
It's being tested. It's been tested in the
So-
courts, but a lot of the internet businesses have gone by the wayside in the meantime. And this industry, this small industry, and most of the wineries in the United States are small. There are a few mega entities. They need this. You need free trade between the states, and by the way, it's guaranteed by the Constitution.
Yeah.
It's some old prohibition machinery still in place.
And
It
a
needs to
very,
change.
very strong liquor lobby in
Yeah,
Washington, D.C.
I'm sure it has something to do with who's going to make the money and who isn't.
A government of the lobby, for the lobby, never mind.
So if you're thinking of maybe having a tasting room, would it be where you're located now?
I don't know.
Okay, so
Probably.
you haven't gotten that far down the
Probably.
road.
People like, even though our winery is an old turkey processing plant in a light industrial area of McMinnville, people walk in the winery and it smells like a winery because it's been accumulating these lovely aromas for years, and people like being at the winery.
And it's very real.
But
It
I
is
think
real.
they enjoy coming to see a real place where you really make wine. It's not a faux Burgundian wine cellar.
You're not selling candles.
Right. Well,
Don't say Burgundian, say Tuscan or
Well, I should
whatever.
say,
there's a lot of
I should
Tuscan
not
around
even
here.
say
Wow.
Burgundian. I should say just some fantasy of a wine cellar.
What did someone
Yeah.
call him the other day? Oh, Deb. God, what'd you say? A monument to their egos.
Oh.
Now,
But leave that out.
the other part of your building is another winery that works out of there, isn't it?
It used to be. I used to rent that to Fred Arterbury, who was Jim Marsh's son-in-law.
Okay. I thought it was Tory Moore, but
No, they're down the street.
oh,
They're part of the Pinot Ghetto. I prefer to call it the Pinot Ghetto, but
I like
there's
that.
been some resistance because it's not politically correct. So it's the newer people in the Pinot Ghetto call it the Pinot Quarters or whatever.
Well, that's our marketing name. We also call it the Hood. So
But there are 5 wineries down there now, which is kind of neat. This is the European model once again. I mean, I guess we had the first downtown winery too, by necessity, because no one would loan me any money to build a winery out here. But now there's 5, 6, 7 in McMinnville.
6 or 7,
and
I think now.
there's 7 in Carlton that use the Carlton zip code. But the European idea is that this land's too darn valuable to be building buildings on.
yeah.
You live in the village, and your winery's in the village. That would be nice.
So do you, like there are tasting rooms there. You go down on 99W and there's a tasting room down there someplace, and there's one in Carlton, I think. I mean, do you sell to those kind of places?
Mm-hmm.
We sell to Amity. Amity runs a tasting room out on Highway 18.
All right.
And they've just reorganized, and I haven't gotten the wine back in there, but I need to.
And we had it it's at the Lawrence Gallery, and it's a
Well, that was Amity's tasting room.
usually any place where they're selling a collection of Oregon wines, we sell our wine there, and they're
Ponzi
tasted
has
in
our
those places.
Pinot Meunier at their place in Dundee.
Mhm.
All right. And then you sell directly to restaurants also?
Not directly, it goes through a distributor.
I mean, do you have to go through a distributor?
We don't have to, but Diana and I both delivered wine in the old days, and as Diana has said, got a little tired of slipping on the lettuce walking into the kitchen.
So,
At our size, we need a distributor.
we're big enough to use a distributor, and we're old enough to be tired of some of that stuff. And
Two
life
good
is-
reasons,
And
eh?
life is short.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you do wine futures? Do you sell futures?
No, I sell pass.
You got me on what you're saying now.
Well, I have a library of wine that we've made over the past 32 years. Extensive library.
So
a lot of the new kids on the block have only futures to sell, but I have this entire history to sell. And our wines have a reputation internationally for aging fantastically. So we're beginning to sell some of those older wines out of the library.
On those 2 weekends during the year.
No, other times too.
And we have a mailing list, and we have private customers.
Let me have a copy of your mailing list. But your the application to get on your mailing list.
Oh, good deal.
Do you have any kind of membership subscription or any of those kind of things? That, somebody pays so much and they get 3 or 4 bottles every quarter or something like that.
I don't know what it is about me, but I just
You're
everyone's doing
renegade.
this. Everyone is doing this, and unless we can come up with something that's sort of unique, and I think we can because we've got the history that I just talked about to sell. We don't have a wine club.
Okay.
We might.
We
might
are
do some of
thinking
that.
of some of these things at this point.
All right. Well,
But it's got to be different than every guy on the block. I mean, there's
there's
a
one
wine
niche.
club every time you turn around. There's a wine club. So so someone's used that one. There's something else you can conceive of.
We like to try to be original and ornery.
I don't
No,
think those two
just-
words go together. I mean, they don't have to by any means.
Well, I was
Well-
just described in an article in the Seattle Times as being crusty, and I decided, I'd rather be crusty than Wonder Bread.
Good answer, even if you didn't give it to them. I mean, you've had a lot of success, and you've also had some failures along the way. And maybe you don't
Yeah.
describe them as failures, but everything hasn't been a straight uphill road like that, right?
Well,
Oh, I made a mistake once.
Okay.
I thought I was wrong, and it turned
oh,
out
I
I
hate
wasn't.
that joke. I don't feel like I really don't feel like we've made failures. I
Okay.
think we've
And
had
I used the wrong word.
I think we've had disappointments in the way things, won't go along the way we like them to. Like, we really, really, really wish interstate shipment would get into place.
Right.
That kind of thing. Those are, but I don't
Yeah.
feel like we failed our
Yeah.
own
I
dream.
didn't mean just
You
your
know.
stuff. I meant failure for your ability to do some of the things you'd
Yeah,
like to
kind
do,
of
which would be like
frustrations
shipping.
and things.
Would
Yes,
be one thing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's
Okay.
definitely, that's
Yeah.
not a failure yet. I'm not dead yet.
You're not 400 yet either.
Good point.
All told, do you have any regrets whatsoever for having gone into this as your career?
No.
That's the perfect answer.
I actually was lying awake a couple of weeks ago thinking, now, was this a good idea? Sort of at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was thinking, if it had been presented to me again, I can't think of anything cooler to have done. So this was okay.
Actually, and my question deals with Diana coming here. I mean, you already had the land here when you met Diana?
It was just,
And you
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, you knew this is where you wanted to go.
yeah, I had the grapes in the ground.
All right, now, you're coming into this, you came from Texas?
I was working in Dallas, yeah.
I mean, how did you feel about coming here to a sort of a very new situation, although you did have a full-time job, so it wasn't totally pioneer and chancy.
It's sort of embarrassing to reflect on this now because I would like my story to have been a little more thoughtful, earlier, that I would have.
If you don't want to talk about this.
No, I'm
okay.
just saying because it's funny, but it's also kind of embarrassing. Because I would like to have thought that I was taking my life a little more seriously.
Okay.
But I met David and the story was so great, and I really, really wanted to come to the West Coast. And it just sounded wonderful, and I thought I would just jump in. I just jumped off the edge and did it.
Good adventure.
And the fact that it's worked out has been fairly miraculous, but it
Don't say
did.
that.
But it did.
She
We
said
worked
the
hard
West
to make it
Coast.
work.
Yeah.
Because she had a boyfriend who had a place up above the
The
old
Napa
Christian
Valley,
Brothers location, which is gorgeous, back up in the hills in the Mayacamas Mountains. And that was the west coast of Diana. She didn't realize that there's also mud if you get a little
Well,
further
I had
north.
never been to Oregon. I was thinking more, a little more glamorous lifestyle. But this really has been the one that is more in tune with my nature. To come up here and pioneer and have things a little bit harder, and certainly not to have to go do the Napa Valley Society thing, and it's been more fulfilling to do it up here. And so I even though I may have thought I wasn't being very serious, maybe I was.
By accident.
Maybe unconsciously I was making a lot of good decisions.
Well, that's,
See,
that's,
so that's when you're 22, that's what you do, right? You just jump.
even
That's
when
right.
you're younger than that, you jump foolishly. Getting to some of the things about the plants in that. When you cut, which you do, you take the cuttings every year. Every spring you go out and cut the vines, you trim the vines, right? And those are the cuttings.
Well, you can make cuttings are generally for propagation.
Oh, that's not just trimming the vine so that it's in good shape for the next year.
This is pruning now,
Okay.
and the wood is in long canes. It's not, and if you cut those canes into lengths, and they're cuttings, and then you plant those, and that you propagate from those.
All right.
So this is just pruning at this point.
All right, so the cuttings, if you take those long vines and you cut them into foot-long pieces, and would you sell them? Do you use them for yourself to get new plants going? I mean, do you get to the point where you just throw them away?
Most of them get chopped up and returned to the soil. We took the nutrient out of the soil, so we're giving that part of it back. A lot of it went out with the grapes, but a lot of the nutrient. But
Oh, yeah.
at this point, we're not. I've been in the nursery business. We have trying to get ends to meet around here. In the early days, we tried just about everything. And one of them was the nursery business, and that was cuttings and propagating in a greenhouse that we had out here. God,
Oh, so it was,
God forbid.
the greenhouse and the nursery was with respect to the the grape growing. Not, I didn't realize what you were trying to
I
grow.
was trying to. Well, it was.
Well,
also
there was
had
a
to do
market
with hunger.
there was a market for vinewood,
Yeah.
and not too
We
many
had
people were growing it. I mean, so that was a way we could make some money. But now there are, people who that's their sole business is to propagate grape materials for vineyards, and it's easy to get and it's inexpensive or relatively inexpensive at this point. But earlier that wasn't the case.
No one had any vines except me.
Well, they could have gone down to UC Davis.
They couldn't have gotten the ones that I got, because I got those out of the UC Davis variety collection by coaxing my professor into letting me go prune them.
Okay, I see. And he
Or
knew
just
you
letting
would.
everybody
They
go
don't
in
let
there
people
and prune.
just go in and start pruning those grapevines. No.
Tell me a little bit about any problems with disease and birds.
Well, this is the fungus capital of the world, the Willamette Valley in western Oregon. particularly northwestern Oregon. That's why we have such great mushrooms. So we have problems with powdery mildew, and in years when it's raining in the autumn, we'll have bunch rot problems. Can.
The grapes just go bad on the vine?
Yeah, they just rot. It's called noble rot in some places, in Sautern and in Germany, and it is. It dehydrates the grapes, but you have to have drying conditions after this mold has infected the cluster. You have to have certain drying conditions. You have to have it moist for the mold to cause the infection, then it has to dry. It shrivels the grapes and it concentrates the flavors of the grapes. Plus it adds a little flavor from the mold itself, which is really quite nice. It's called Botrytis cinerea. It's all over this valley. It's on blackberries and it's everywhere. We couldn't escape it if we wanted to. So that's a possibility, but we keep that pretty much under control. And we've grown things biologically, or however you want to call it, organically.
Okay, so you don't use chemicals? Is that?
We use sulfur and we use some copper for the bunch rot if we need to. There are exotic chemicals you can use these days, systemic chemicals, that will prevent these things. But they are so messing around with nature by their very nature. They go into the vine, they change. They're going to get into the grapes and they're going to get into the wine. And I don't want to drink that stuff. I don't think you do. So we use a basic element, sulfur, which is a basic element on the 100 and how many on the planet, and copper, which is also a basic element.
Yeah.
And that's it. No exotic long chain hydrocarbon wonderful cure-alls.
Is that the only disease you have to worry about? I mean, do you have phylloxera here?
Our vineyards have been surrounded by phylloxera. We're still planted on own roots, and I'm still planting on own-rooted vines because I think own-rooted vines direct their destiny better than a rootstock that some guy has an idea is going to be a good rootstock. I think the vines have a better idea what roots they want to be on, and that's their own. But our exposure to phylloxera has been close. I mean, we have neighbors that have had a huge phylloxera outbreak. And so far our vineyards are not showing the signs. They will probably get phylloxera. We don't know how the life cycle of phylloxera works in Oregon. I took an entire 6-month seminar on phylloxera when I was at Davis. The the life cycle of phylloxera is incredibly complicated. We don't know how it functions up here. Also, by growing, not touching this soil with a bunch of chemicals, I haven't disturbed things. There are rhizomes down there and mycorrhiza that you see in rainforests. That, these are part of an entire ecosystem. And I think, this is theory, and it may be booga booga, and it may be metaphysical, but I think that has to do with the health of our plants at this point.
Somebody told me once, someone who owns a vineyard in Washington County, that they don't let anybody walk in the vineyard unless you have to put certain shoes on or something, and you have to walk through something, and that because of the spread of phylloxera. Do you have any kind of limitations here? Okay, so I couldn't just go out there and walk.
No.
Okay.
We dip your feet in the chlorine bath.
Well, if you've been out in somebody else's vineyard.
Yeah, if you've been out in another vineyard. I mean, if you come in off the street from New York City, I'm not going to wash your feet off the well, probably should. No, we move equipment from one vineyard to another, so that equipment is washed
And
off
it's on the road.
at the vineyard
I see, okay.
before
All right.
it leaves the vineyard it's been in. It gets washed off.
And what about birds?
Birds have been a problem in the past. We used to net all of our vineyards when we had far less acreage. It's a real pain in the neck. It's the only really effective way to control them, but it's a pain and expensive. But the bird situation, I don't know whether this has to do with climatic change or not, but you can see when the birds are going to come in here. And our bird problem is primarily robins. And they're migratory, and they come down from British Columbia. And you can watch satellite pictures, which I do. I love that stuff. watch the satellite pictures in the Gulf of Alaska, and when the storms start moving down into British Columbia from the Gulf in the fall, the robins migrate south. I've got 3 days from the time those, you can see the band after band of moisture that's going to start causing fall to begin. And the robins will be here in 3 days. I haven't seen them.
So this is a problem you have in the fall you're talking about.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah, it's just in the fall. When the grapes are ripe, the birds are there.
Yeah, we have bird nests out in the grapevines. We protect the little robin eggs out here while we're...
But I was going to say though, earlier, I think before there were so many vineyards around, which I do think helps dissipate the bird problem. There's lots of places
and
the birds
disease
can go,
problems.
and disease problems. But early on, when I remember when there were only a few of us grape growers up here, we had much more serious bird problems. And you'd wake up some morning and it'd be like Alfred Hitchcock's old film. There would just be, you couldn't hear yourself for the birds, and they were just cleaning out. Especially love Pinot Noir because they were dark and they could see.
We have we have so many more grapes for them to choose from.
I really think that just
could
sort of
be.
spreads them out more.
Because this is wonderful food. They love grapes.
Yeah.
Love them.
I can understand that.
Please.
Now this is a lot for my information here. What's a cuvee?
Well, it depends on who's using the word, I suppose.
Well, I got the impression from the first time somebody told me about it that it was not a particularly complimentary.
Cuvée?
Yeah.
It's just a lot of wine.
A lot.
Cuvée,
You mean
cuvée
like
exceptionnel.
A specific,
size of something?
no, a
No, it's a
specific
container.
amount of wine. You're talking about
We
this
have a-
cuvée and that cuvée.
Well, but when you buy wine in the stores, some of them say cuvée on it.
It's generally a champagne term. It comes from the Champagne district in France.
No, in this case, I mean, I can tell you where I've seen it. I've seen it on Montenoy bottles. And I
Well,
don't know what that
There's a
means.
French term that says cuvée exceptionnel.
It means
Exceptional selection of...
good batch.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah,
the
it's
so
a
that
batch.
mean?
It's
Good
a batch.
batch.
Okay, all right.
That's all a cuvée is. Thanks.
And it's it's a marketing do
All
that.
right. Well, it changes my mind now because I thought it was something that was slightly derogatory.
No.
No.
Okay.
No.
If anything,
It sounds better than saying batch.
Yes.
a cuter word. Yeah.
Batch exceptionnel. Just doesn't have that ring, does it?
All right, there's a couple of things in here that I just wanted to kind of clear up. There's a statement, well, I actually need both of these things. Let's see, where is it? David's theory is retaining flavor in grapes is more important than reaching maturity every year. What? No.
No, that is maturity.
Okay, because I was going to say when I was reading this seems to say something different.
It does.
So I have to change this.
What I meant was, we let our grapes reach maturity and we picked them. Sounds like the Valley of the Jolly Green Giant, but we picked them at the peak of maturity, and there are peaks of maturity for every fruit, every crop. That's when we pick the grapes. There are people who tend to let the grapes have what's called hang time, which again is from one of our noted wine authorities who writes about wine, who can't grow a gladiola. Hang time just means you're getting the grapes overripe.
They let them hang past.
Past maturity, past
All right,
perfection.
and that has to do with the amount of sugar in the grape.
Oh,
Is that right?
much more complicated. Sugar is the most obvious indicator, yes. I mean, as the grapes mature after they've changed color in August, the acid levels go down and the sugar increases. But you have to reach a point where these things are sort of balanced out and balanced with the flavor that's in the fruit intrinsically.
Now, does that mean you taste the grapes?
Oh, sure.
Okay. So it's not just their appearance.
No. We analyze them in the lab. We take samples constantly to see where the pH and the acid and the sugars are primarily. But the prime function of me as a quote winemaker unquote is to taste the grapes and see how that's going to translate into wine. And you know, that's something I didn't do when I was 25 years old because I depended on my scientific background because it's all I had. But I've tasted enough grapes now that I have kind of an idea how they're supposed to taste when they're ripe. They taste better when they're overripe for that immediate gratification. I mean, if you want to taste a grape, you want it overripe because it's going to have a heck of a lot of sugar and low acid, and it's going to be just bursting plum juice in your mouth. Oh God, that sounds like Robert Parker. Don't I get my chance at Robert Parker on this?
Not in this lifetime, David.
Is this something you want to say?
No.
Okay. Again, reading something in here, I don't remember where. They talked about, oh yes, it's, I think it's in here about the maritime climate,
Mhm.
which is supposedly good for growing the grapes here. And I have to be honest, I did not know where Burgundy was in France, but it's not maritime. So
It is not.
how come it's the maritime climate here that works and it's not there?
Well, the continental climate that they have in Burgundy is, by coincidence, we happen to have almost exactly the same temperature curves throughout the growing season. I mean, if you plot the temperature, I have one of those things somewhere. McMinnville, Oregon, and Beaune, France, and Burgundy, the temperature curves are almost identical, going up in July and down in the fall. Rainfall is a little higher in Burgundy during the summer, but it's lower during the winter. The sunlight, the daylight, the insolation, it's called insolation, coming in, hitting the vines is almost identical as Burgundy. And that has to do somewhat with latitude. Yes?
No, you said, that's what I
Okay.
was talking about. So go back to
But the
maritime.
maritime climate here gives us our coolness, and they have a coolness, I guess, that comes out of the Alps. I don't know. I don't know exactly.
Okay.
But our maritime climate gives us almost the same temperature things, and our latitude gives us that extra sunlight that we need in a climate that's pretty cool for growing grapes.
So basically it ends up being a long, cool growing season, which is what Pinot Noir wants. And one of the few other places in the world that has a long, cool growing season is Burgundy.
That's why Pinot Noir is so specific to so few areas on the planet.
Okay. And I guess unless there's something else that you want to say to finish up your story, I would like it if you kind of describe what goes on at crush time, from picking the grapes to whatever you consider the end of this time period.
You want the old days or the new days?
You can choose. And if you don't want to tell me.
Well, in the old days, I used to work by myself because I couldn't afford any labor, so I'd work over there 18 hours a day anyway. Sometimes I'd sleep at the winery and wake up and punch caps in the middle of the night, middle of the morning. And that was only with 7 acres of grapes producing. It was tough.
Yeah.
And as I've been able to afford help, we've also gotten better equipment.
You've replaced a few of those things in the winery that you kludged together.
Yes, we have done that. I still have the original pump just for the fun of it, but we've used it a couple of times.
It's still pretty low tech over there.
It's low tech, but that's an aside, and I wanted to bring that up this morning. You can get me back on track, but I just read an article on production of olive oil in the Mediterranean. And here what we have is a 5,000-year-old product that's produced essentially by crushing up olives and then putting them on mats and pressing the oil out of them. And this is a 5,000-year-old process that's almost the same thing as squeezing grapes. And the only thing new technology has brought to olive oil is better filtration if they're going to filter it. It's not as good filtered, but better presses with hydraulic rams instead of a donkey turning a wooden screw. But you know, technology of winemaking and the technology of producing something that's essentially a product of nature, you don't need high tech to do it. So we're still kind of low tech over there, but it gets the job done beautifully.
We're also small volume.
Yeah.
Probably you need a lot of that technology just to handle big volumes of wine, but since we don't do it that way, we don't need a whole lot of high-tech stuff.
Plus, again, we're growing grapes ourselves, and we're growing grapes that come in from our vineyards as perfectly as we can get them, which means we don't have to do a lot of techno twisting in the winery. Although there are people who just love to do that. I mean, I graduated from Davis. I was a techno twit. I know what it's like. You just have to mess with it. And I've learned over the years, don't mess with it. It makes it better. Now, where were we? That was an aside.
So she's talking about the process of
Yes, the crush.
crush.
So the crush is essentially, once again, it's the same as it was 5,000 years ago. You bring the grapes in, you crush them, you press them, or you ferment them. If they're red wine, you ferment them on the skins and get the color out in varying sizes of containers, and you submerge the cap by varying means. The best way still, and has been used for centuries, is bare feet. Yes, it is. That's very low tech, isn't it? But I worked for a port firm in Portugal, and right after I got out of Davis, and we were trying different techniques because they were losing all of their treaders to Germany to make higher wages. So we were trying techniques of pumping over the wine and having mechanical, they have one of these mechanical feet up at one of the local wineries. The grapes that were treaded as opposed to pumped over as opposed to the mechanical foot, the treaded grapes, the wines were always superior.
But tell about what you do use instead of
We use a
feeds.
thing called a cap puncher, which we ferment in,
That's all right.
we ferment in small bins, and we punch the caps down by hand with a thing that looks like a plumber's friend.
The caps, you mean this is what's on
This
top
is-
of the barrel?
The
Yeah.
grape
The
skins
grapes
floating
coming
up
up,
on
yeah.
top.
On top of the fermenter, not the barrel. But I'm talking about red wines now. So all the skins and the seeds will rise up because there's this carbon dioxide coming off, pushing them up, and the juice is down below, and the juice is colorless. So you got to get those skins down. That's where all the pigmentation is. Got to get the skins submerged, and as the alcohol increases and the temperature increases, it extracts the color from the seeds and skins. So you have to be there punching these things down. We do that 4 times a day now.
And how many fermentation tanks would you have? Like, for instance,
last
this.
year we had, generally we have 170 of these things going at once, which is a full-time job.
In that site over there in McMinnville?
Yeah, that whole big room
Plus
plus,
some warehouse space across the street.
and so the guys are just going up and down all day long, like this.
Pushing the grapes?
Now they come in and reload the press or unload the press, and then they go back and punch caps again. And it's
Anytime
just-
there's a free moment off, you go over and punch caps.
So how much time is there from when you pick until you've put it into whatever storage device it's going to be in until it goes into bottles, or some of it goes into bottles right away?
No, not in bottles, no. Between picking and going into a storage container, it's probably 2 weeks. With whites, it's a couple of days. With reds, it's 2 weeks, because you want to get that color extraction. The white, the juice goes into the container almost immediately. And then for bottling, it depends on the wine. Our reserve wines are in barrel for 2 years, and they fall naturally clear. And the ones from our younger vineyards, I'm talking reds again, are bottled after a year. And the Pinot Gris depends on when it gets through with some, again, natural processes that go on by themselves over at the winery. Generally a year after picking, 9 months.
But you have, what, a few very intense weeks? Does it go into
about
6 weeks?
6
Oh,
weeks
yeah.
of it, very intense.
Yeah, just bringing all the grapes in. and going through that process with each vineyard.
And as soon as those last wines are finished and put into their resting containers, whether it's barrels or tanks, then we have to start cleaning that winery like crazy and get ready for the big Thanksgiving weekend
Oh.
tastings. And so we do this thing where we transform what is a working, very sticky
Oh, it's a mess.
guy world over there into a tasting room.
Oh, so where people come for the tasting, this is part of the work area. Oh, I
They're
see.
right in the
Okay.
middle of what the room that we use as our big work area becomes the tasting rooms.
And then where do those containers go when you have?
They're all in place, but the processing area where there are hoses and pumps and crusher and stemmer and presses and conveyor belt and all this stuff just gets pushed out of the way. The walls, which have gotten totally mucked up, although we try to I keep trying to convince people, clean it as you go. I've been trying for years.
He's pretty stern about that. The guys all laugh at him.
I worked
It
for a
works
guy
better.
once in the Napa Valley, my first job in the wine business, and I pulled a bung out of a barrel and I put it back down on another barrel like that. And I can still hear him yelling in my ear. You take a bung out, there's going to be, on this barrel, there's going to be bacteria. You turn it upside down so you don't put that bacteria back in the barrel.
Uh-huh.
And that's always been my thing. Lee used to, when I'd go to bed, he'd be out in the winery in the morning at 4 o'clock cleaning up. And that's what I used to do too. Part of my 19-hour days was probably 5 hours of cleaning.
Well, you're still the one cleaning all the toilets and all that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, that's part of it.
Part of being the boss.
I have one other question, and this is, maybe I know the answer, but this business of new clones coming along, is this simply a matter of the vine producing something that's different from the parent?
Mhm.
It's like flowers, where you get a sport coming along, and then that's propagated. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Clones, the basic clones of, for example, Pinot Noir that I brought up here. Well, Pinot Gris, our Pinot Gris is everywhere, and that's my first 160 sticks. That's all around the Willamette Valley and Oregon. Pinot Noir, and there are many new clones now people are bringing in that have been cleared through Oregon State University. And you know what? Clones in blind tastings with industry winemakers tasting every year, which clones continually come out on top in the tastings. The first two I brought up here, which is Wadensville and Pomard. Each of these clones has a characteristic, and my personal feeling is to have a mix of them. We have 4 different clones now. If I were to replant some of these vineyards, I'd put more of a mix in, but I'd be a little more selective. I don't go by the theory that if it's French, it's better. And a lot of people figure, well, if you have French clones, you're going to make French wine. Well, that's nonsense. We're in Oregon. We make Oregon wine. And some of these clones are better adapted to what we want to do in Oregon than others. Chardonnay, we have a good selection of Chardonnay because I took this selection from an old California vineyard myself before UC Davis released a thing called Clone 108, which is a California clone. And Clone 108 got planted all over Oregon. It doesn't do well here.
And excuse me, by California clone, you mean that it was developed for specific
For
California
warm
conditions
conditions.
and warm condition and their particular yields and so forth, and it's totally inappropriate for.
High crop,
This
high
climate.
acid, late ripening, everything we don't want here. So Oregon Chardonnay has gotten bashed. Our Chardonnay is a selection of God knows what. It came
Probably
from
more
Burgundy
European
years ago.
background.
And it works here. And we make Chardonnays that are pretty stunning, actually, in all modesty. But I'm not taking credit for them. The grapes are what produce them. But the new French clones of Chardonnay, which are earlier ripening and lower acid, and have, I think, are going to revolutionize the Chardonnay industry in Oregon. Right now, people being faddish are pulling out all their Chardonnay because there's no market for it. My particular feeling is when people are pulling everything out, plant it. And that's not just running against the wind, that's seeing how the market works in the long term. This is not a short-term business, and there are a lot of people who don't have the picture. Their compass card is a little limited.
Well, I've gone through all the questions I have, so what else would you like to say? Since you still, aside from filling in all the answers to the questions I asked, I mean, you still kind of ended your story in about 1987.
Well, we could go on about, see, we bought those, oops, was that, oh, that was David. In 1980s, okay, you can just,
Okay, now it's
I'll
going.
just cue you. I was just gonna say, in 1987 is probably when things began to change flavor in the Oregon wine industry as a whole. Because that was when, I believe, okay, IPNC
85.
started, and also Robert Drouin bought property here.
Oh, yes, you were going to talk about
And so
Joanne.
that added a certain validation to what had already begun. I mean, just because someone French was coming here. And then also a lot of the people who were coming to Pinot Festival began looking at property in Oregon, and so there was a certain amount of boom that began, I would say.
John Roothouse was right, wasn't he?
I would say that's when the boom began for the bigger, better financed wineries, was around 1987 to 1990. That got started.
Yeah, the early 90s primarily.
Yeah.
Things started, we talked about it before, but with the tasting that happened in Paris and Beaune, where an American upstart Pinot Noir showed the world that it could happen here. By 1985, the effects of that were showing in Oregon. There were a heck of a lot of people coming up here in 1985 was a pivotal year, and 86. And as Diana says, in 87, the ball was rolling, and into the 90s, then we started seeing these more money coming in here. But the Drouin thing in 1987 gave credence in a number of ways. It was Robert's wines that we were up against in Beaune. I mean, he called the tasting, and we did very well against his wines. And Robert is a very smart man. He's an intense French chauvinist, which is fine, because that's where the word was invented, and if I were French, I would be too. And for him to have the vision to say, well, maybe Burgundy isn't the place in the
Or
world,
the only place.
the only place. And to commit for Domaine Drouin here gave the Willamette Valley a heck of a lot of credence as the other place in the world to grow Pinot Noir. That's been good. Very good.
So he started here in 87, which means when would his first wine have been?
Well, we told him about, we were staying with them in Burgundy.
Oh, so were you there at that tasting?
No,
That
I
we
didn't
won?
even know that tasting was
No,
happening.
that was in 1980, 81.
That was 80.
80.
No, we were visiting in 1987, and my vineyard manager, Joel Myers, called me and said, the Bollinger place is for sale. And this is a piece of land I'd looked at for years up there. I loved it. And we had just bought 40 acres, our Three Sisters vineyard, that spring. But we were having lunch, weren't we, with...
We were staying with the Drouins in Beaune at the time this
Yeah.
telephone call came in, and Robert had been talking with David Adelsheim and with David Lett about possibly doing something here in Oregon. Veronique had
Veronique
stayed
had
with
worked
us
there,
for Harvest
his
the
daughter.
year before, and so we were having some, kind of a good exchange. And so Robert said he would like to do something in Oregon, and
Bang, the
wasn't
phone
quite
rang.
as exactly sure what. And then this phone call came that the property was available, and it was, they said, okay, let's go for it. So they were over here and purchased that land within a month, and
Well,
got
Dave
started.
flew over and took some pictures. And
Dave
FedEx them
Adelsheim
over.
was very instrumental in helping them make the purchase. So,
And they made that commitment, and it's been a great commitment here.
Mhm.
Domaine Drouin wines are looked at as almost, they're not quite as non-mainstream as mine, but they're somewhat, they make wine out of the vineyards.
they're interested in
And
making Pinot
therefore-
Noir, not great big red heavy
Yeah,
wines.
big red is not their thing. They're making elegant, stylish, wonderful Pinot Noirs, and it's fun to have them here from my perspective because it's the two of us. Damn near.
Well, there are some
There
others.
are a few others, but going after that particular style of wine and having once again, I have to bring up the vineyard because the vineyard is the all-important thing. And they know it, I know it, and we get along so well knowing each other and producing the kind of wines we do. It's just a very compatible situation. It's lovely.
Now, they have a big spread, don't they? And a
Yeah.
big house, or
No, they have a little house.
That, when you go all the way up the top of the Bremen Orchard and it's
Yeah.
off to the right.
well,
You have to
we
drive
actually drove this road a couple of weeks ago, my husband and I, because I said I want to find out where it goes. So when you get up to a certain point, the paved road goes this way and it dead ends, and then you go down this gravel road which takes you over hill and dale. So-
That's Archery Summit Road. the
Okay,
gravel
so
road.
where is Domaine, then up, you go, continue going
Keep
up
going
on that
up the
paved road.
paved road to
Go
the
up
very
the
top.
paved road, and there you can't see you can see the winery. Jim, what's your attention? You can see the winery from the first. If you just go up the hill here and you look at the first dog leg, you look up the hill and you see the winery. And the big house at the top of the hill here, that's Domaine Serene, which
Okay.
is if you go to the top of the hill, up Domaine Duran's here, the Wine Country Farm, bed and breakfast is here. And if you turn left, there's a huge winery on a piece of property there that belongs to Domaine Serene. It's 1 square acre.
Is this a French company that came here, or they've
No,
just taken
these
on a
are-
French name?
They took on a French name. These are it's pharmaceutical money from Minneapolis.
Oh, yes, I remember reading about that in the
Yeah,
paper. Yeah.
That's part of the new money up here. And
Well,
that was-
Archery Summit was new money coming in, definitely.
Yeah, it was California. He was a producer in California.
Yeah, he had a
Pine Ridge.
winery in
I mean,
California.
because he was French, wasn't he?
No, Gary Andrus is from Salt Lake City.
Oh,
Beg your
well, I
pardon.
guess the way I saw it written, I thought it was French. Oh,
No.
was he the skier who?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, something there made me think French.
Well,
Gary Andrus is not French. He's from
his
Utah like I am.
His son-in-law is French.
Yeah, well, somehow or other.
His son-in-law, Laurent Montalieu, worked at Willackenzie. He was the winemaker there. Just recently quit.
And he and his daughter and wife are now their own little winery, so that's interesting.
All right. Anything else that you would like to say?
Eunice Freed asked me that the other day. She said, I'm going to call you back. I want you to tell
Sum
me.
up your life, David.
Yeah, sum up the Oregon wine industry. for
Oh,
me.
wow.
Well, I think what we started in Oregon was the first time in the United States that people have really looked at growing grapes in a climate where they're adapted. And it's still an unfulfilled promise that the rest of American viticulture would do the same thing. Because people are still planting willy-nilly. We have a nice model here in Oregon. And we should be recognized for what we're doing here by growing these grapes in the proper climate. And I think that'll happen in the future. I think more and more, Oregon has certainly gotten a lot of play in terms of being the other place to grow Pinot Noir. But there are other areas where you can make big reds that have cut into that. If we could change the opinions, this is being extremely politically correct, of some of the wine writers who seem to feel bigger is better, so that they would start to recognize with their concrete palates that, whoops, I just
That's
slipped
politically
off the
correct.
political
Don't hold back, David.
Strike that.
Well,
They
well,
have to
then it doesn't all have to
recognize-
taste the same.
Yeah, I mean, the whole world is becoming homogenized. Every town you drive into looks like every other town you've driven into. And everything has to be the same and everything has to be safe. And, you know, it takes the excitement out of life. And what we can produce here in Oregon are exciting wines. We certainly have an exciting place to live, but we don't want to advertise that too much. Particularly on a day like today. There's another 5.5 inches of rain coming down today.
The basement's flooding. It is.
But there's some exciting things that can be done here. And every year is a different year here too. Every year is a new adventure for doing those things. And it's fun.